One of the most interesting parts about the internet is that anyone can create anything for it. All manner of interests, hobbies, and niches have a place online. Since the internet has existed for a while, and technology and interests move at an alarming rate, it has led to parts of it being left behind. And this has led to a new hobby: exploring the abandoned side of the internet, or Internet Archaeology. This is a term I've been incredibly interested in. Since the start of my channel, I have wanted nothing more than to catalog and investigate internet urban legends, stories, and interesting finds. Finding what the internet used to be comprised of was a no-brainer for a content rabbit hole I found myself traveling down. This video will cover abandoned websites, blogs, games, and more. There is so much hidden behind the walls of the internet, stuff that would take years to catalog. With the help of the Internet Archive and other lost media investigators, there's a chance to preserve as much of the internet culture as we can. So friends, let's dive down this iceberg together. This is the abandoned side of the internet, Iceberg Explained. The San Francisco Fog Cam is a website with a webcam that has been in operation since 1994. It currently holds the title of the oldest operating webcam. The Fog Cam was set up at San Francisco State University as part of a student project and has been moved a couple of times, but it still remains. The website is very simple in design. The Fog Cam is set up in the middle of the page. There are a few links to other sites along the bottom, with most being other partner webcams. There's also a section about the story of the webcam and how proud the website is of the fact that it is listed as one of the oldest websites on the internet on Wikipedia. This website doesn't have much to offer for things to read or do, but it is a testament to the resilience of the internet. This website has been in operation since '94, and I don't see it getting taken down anytime soon. "99 Rooms" was a free flash game that you could play on the official website. It was released in 2004 and was a point-and-click game. Some referred to it as a puzzle game, but there weren't any real puzzles to be solved. Instead, you were given an artistic background and told to escape the 99 rooms. All you could do was click. The images came from an abandoned industrial complex in East Berlin and featured graffiti art to enhance the visuals. While not strictly a horror game, it had eerie music, sound effects, and dark visuals. Even the movement of the graffiti art would be considered disturbing. The atmosphere was perfect for a horror experience. As the game says, there are 99 rooms to explore, and just about every one is atmospheric and creepy. There are a few that stand out more than others, but I'll just quickly put together a visual of the ones I found the most creepy, cryptic, or visually interesting. This is such a fun and atmospheric game. I can just imagine stumbling across this site by accident as a young child, then trying to play it while sitting as close as I can to get to my computer monitor. Nightmare fuel would be the perfect word for such a find. This website dates back to 1994 and is called Strawberry Pop-Tart Blowtorches. This website is presented like a college thesis, which makes it all the more funny when you go through it. It starts with an abstract, but let's skip that for now. Here's the introduction. Last year, an article by well-known newspaper columnist Dave Barry noted that Kellogg's Strawberry Pop-Tarts could be made to emit flames like a blowtorch, if left in a toaster long enough. Given previous work in the field of food entertainment, see Fun with Grapes, a case study, it was obvious that this was a new frontier that required further exploration. The present work describes our independent verification and experience with SPT-based combustion. The author of this website, a man named Patrick, decides that he's going to take the Pop-Tart blowtorch theory and see if he can prove it. He obtained a cheap toaster, strawberry Pop-Tarts, and a willingness to learn at the expense of wasted food and poor fire safety. The test begins with the toaster having a Pop-Tart inserted into it. The toaster was taken outside into the driveway and connected to an extender cable. The toaster began its first cycle of 60-second cooking time. It thoroughly burned the Pop-Tart, as the toaster was set to max setting. Then it attempted to remove the Pop-Tart, but wasn't allowed to. The adhesive kept the button pressed down. You can guess how this goes next. It started smoking less than a minute later, then a small flame, then a loud whining sound from the toaster. This was all before it erupted into a flame about 18 inches tall. The Pop-Tart had, in fact, become a blowtorch. Images show exactly how high the flames had been above the toaster. The experiment concludes with an extinguishing of the flames after it was unplugged. It was then decided that it would continue to be a fire hazard for the rest of its life, so it was disposed of. They threw it away, mostly happy with the experiment. This website perfectly encapsulates the weird and fun random sites you used to be able to find online. This was a time when the internet was very new. In the 90s and early 2000s, the internet was almost like a lawless wasteland. Let's continue to the next entry. Our next website is Welcome to Netscape. This is a staple of the early internet in many ways. This is a website that was supposed to act as a homepage for the internet. A user would make their way to this website, which was established in 1994. The main website is simple and explains how to use it. Here you are given links, updates, and a how-to page for making your own websites. Sadly, most of the websites that they were updating each month have gone down. Each link is dead. What I find so interesting about this website is that it assumes the user has no idea how to use the internet or a computer. The website explains how links work, how websites work, and generally how to navigate it all. This is stuff that most of us grew up with, so it's interesting to see a time when people had no idea how the internet worked. Considering that none of the links work now, there's not much more to see here. Just an interesting website that wanted to show you the internet and how to join the fun online. SARS NES Archive is a website all about the best console in gaming, supposedly. The NES was Nintendo's first console, well, the first one to come to America. The first few paragraphs on the website's homepage talk about how great the NES is and how the internet has made it more accessible to everyone due to piracy. They also say they don't condone, but don't look down on anyone who chooses to play this way. SARS NES Archive wants to focus on the games and the collecting of those games. You can find collectibles, walkthroughs, and guides. Too bad that most of the images don't work and the links to collectibles are dead. The NES Museum seemed like a great place to see some of the history of Nintendo, but sadly it's dead too. There are a few resources still available to those who want to play NES games. You can download the music from select NES titles, play with cheat codes, and look into the history of some of the games on the console. There's even a list of all NES games and how rare they are for collectors. This website received its final update in the year 2000. Our next find takes us into the world of UFOlogy, with a website called Kenny Young Archives. This is a personal site started in 1996 by a man named Kenny Young. He has a collection of articles about strange sightings and the like. There's a banner on the page with what I assume is Kenny Young next to an artist's interpretation of an alien. Below is an image with block lettering stating, UFO research, information, news, reports, objective investigations. Copyrighted from 1996 to 2004. Below that are a list of UFO sightings, mostly in Ohio. 2004 is the date listed above them, so I'm to assume that the articles are all from that date. Let's check out this first story. This report is written by Kenny Young himself and reads, in the days after taking a number of unusual rumors and odd reports of strange activity from the northeastern Ohio area in the last week of September, UFO sighting reports have continued. While future updates are pending on a report that North Olmsted police officers have taken a sequence of unusual UFO photographs, a female talk show radio host from Case Western Reserve University has reported having several photographs of a two-tube shaped or blimp-like object seen in the Cleveland area surrounded by approaching jets. One of the objects reportedly vanished while under observation. Evaluation of these photographs are pending. Separately, incoming UFO sighting reports were received by the Cincinnati UFO hotline at a frequency and rate that was felt to be of some surprise. One report of a female caller claiming 2 witnesses to multicolored lighted objects visually spied over Westfield, Indiana in late September. Another caller reported 3 witnesses to an object near Tiffin, Ohio, while other callers reported unusual activity in southern Ohio along the I-75 corridor from Dayton south to Springboro, Franklin. This is pretty straightforward reporting of UFO sightings. These sightings I haven't been able to corroborate on other websites, but I may just need to look a little harder. I did find that Ohio has a ton of UFO sightings each year, being one of the largest states to report on them. They are number 8, falling behind Pennsylvania and Arizona, with number 1 being California simply for how many people live there. On the homepage there are a total of 37 articles on mainly UFOs and the like. There is also a section where you can pick a year for stories. 96 to 03 are the years available, though the main page is full of stories from 04. There's also an analysis section. Let's check that out. This article is titled Fraudulence of a Skeptical View. Here Kenny has a discussion about a magazine he recently started reading. In it, there's a discussion of approaching everything from a skeptic's point of view, though the magazine itself was written from the point of view of skeptics, but they tell their readers to be informed about a rational approach to any analysis. Kenny claims that the article was biased and left out a lot of its data. It was cautious when approaching the subject matter of UFOs. This is likely to appeal to the skeptic and allow them to dismiss any and all information they receive. He seems to disagree heavily with this, not because they're a skeptic though, but because they are biased. He calls them an agenda investigator, basically looking to prove their point rather than investigate their topic. I can see where he's coming from with this belief. There is something to be said about not going into research with an open mind. I always try to throw away any preconceived notions about any topic before I start to dive into its subject matter. This is especially true when looking into rabbit holes and subjects that others have covered already. If you're going to look into something, you should come up with an opinion yourself before thinking about another's. You should keep those in mind, but establish your own thoughts on the subject. This is how almost all analysis should be done. Kenny also pushed this belief further with an article called Bad Science. This covers how a scientist connecting the scientific method shouldn't get too attached to their hypothesis. This level-headed approach to digging for the truth is really admirable. This reading doesn't sound like a conspiracy theorist to me. This sounds like a logical person who wants to know more about the world beyond our planet. His interest in UFOs and the like feels genuine. This all makes sense since in fact, Kenny Young is actually a well-respected member of the UFO community. He even had his own set of TV programs and appeared in various specials over the years. Continuing my search of the website, there's an article that is about the Norwood Searchlight Incident of 1949. This incident was famous in Ohio and was cited through the entire year of 1949 into 1950. These are the images that they captured. It's a strange object caught in the sky on 2 sets of reels. The entire site was witnessed by varying groups, including military, police, scientists, civilians, and members of the clergy. The sightings were reported by these individuals and an investigation was started. They used a large searchlight to try and identify the objects in the sky, and that's where these photos come from. Kenny Young adds his own analysis at the bottom. He seems to have a great insight into most of these reports that he has on the site. It's a great repository of information and analysis for anyone who believes or has a passing interest. The final report I want to look at is this sighting of an unusual figure. This article comes from January of 2004. In it, a teenager saw a strange figure while driving home. Here's an excerpt from the article. The witness lives in Manchester, Indiana, and is a senior at South Dearborn High School. He has one sister currently in college and lives at home with his mother and father. His name will not be used in this report. While driving his black Chevrolet Cavalier, a 1989 two-door model, southbound along North Hogan Road near Manchester, Indiana, a figure was spotted in the headlights of the automobile as it was crouched down near a puddle of water. From the driver's perspective, the figure was spotted out of the windshield of the front of the car. I passed it and looked in the rearview mirror. Then it was standing, he said. After passing the frail-looking figure, the driver looked into his rearview mirror and again observed, illuminated by the taillights of his car, what he described as a tall, abnormal figure that moved strangely with pointed joints that buckled out. He estimated the figure stood around 6 feet 7 inches tall. I had no idea what it was, he said. It had protruding joints and moved very strangely. The driver said he was able to ascertain the figure, alleged to be dark gray or black and pencil thin, stand up and take several steps toward the woods along the roadside. The figure definitely walked on 2 legs and was thought, somehow, to be a male, although no clothing was noted. No face or eyes could be seen, but the witness had the impression that the figure was looking straight at him. The figure was immediately thought to be something out of the ordinary, not a human being. The duration of the sighting was hurried and possibly within the 3 to 4 second range. The driver continued on for a small distance after passing the figure and finally put on his brakes, coming to a stop at an estimated 2-minute walking distance on the road from the location of the sighting. He looked back to further observe the entity. At this point, a second car came into view and approached from the opposite side, passed and then reached the spot on the road where the figure was standing. The 17-year-old motorist reportedly watched closely and observed the second car undertake what he thought to be an evasive maneuver near the vicinity of where he thought the figure would be situated. Then that car turned around at that spot and shortly pulled up behind him, somewhat in the grass. He could then see it was an elderly couple in the car, both in their late 60s or early 70s, and both with gray hair. The driver, who wore glasses, said, "Boy, did you see something back there? I'll tell you right now, that was no person." The passenger in the silver 2-door Cavalier, an elderly female, said it was no human being. It was no man. The elderly couple were reportedly spooked, but offered to follow the first witness the remainder of his trip down North Hogan Road, clearly in the opposite direction of their intended destination route. With the elderly couple following close in the car behind him, the 17-year-old motorist continued down North Hogan Road to his destination at a friend's house, where he called home to tell his mother of the encounter, advising her to lock her doors, his residence less than 3 miles from the sighting location, and then called his uncle. The witness was said to become increasingly hysterical and within an hour was describing the figure as an alien. When asked by his uncle if there could be any alternative explanation for this figure, the witness said that there was a chance that it could have been an improperly dressed elderly person, but still described the object as a dark, shadowy figure and super anorexic that could have been wandering naked and lost, temperatures in the 20s in the area, without a coat. If so, the witness reportedly said he would have felt badly for that person. The uncle, Jerry Sheetal, was contacted within an hour of the sighting and traveled to an area with his wife some 90 minutes later and did not see anything. There is a house and a pond nearby, almost a quarter mile from the area of the sighting. The uncle said his nephew knows the exact location and can identify the spot, but would not agree to return to the area until daylight. This is an article about a strange sight of an entity by a teenager. At the end of the article is a comment by Kenny. Here he explains how the teen ended up calling the creature an alien in an official capacity. It was during an interview with local media. More importantly, this sighting was sent to Kenny through a UFO hotline that he had set up. He would receive numerous calls and emails, as it appears a good chunk of his articles come from these tips. This is how so many of these stories can't be traced to an article online. Kenny was doing his own research in the field, so to speak. The report also includes images of the location where the creature was seen as well as an artist's interpretation of it. These images go a long way in establishing the story for the sighting. You can even see guidelines showing exactly where it all took place. This website is an excellent repository of old UFO sightings and news. There are reports, articles, interviews, and just about any other form of media you could want to find. There are even videos of sightings that he will debunk if he's able to. He wants to believe, but doesn't want to take bad evidence as proof. Sadly, if you're hoping to read more articles than what's on the website, you won't be able to. Kenny Young passed away in 2005 due to cancer. What he leaves behind is a collection of UFO articles, reports, and tons of research. All of it worth at least looking into if you're interested. This website will also stand as a testament to a man who just wanted to believe. Gandalf.com is a website from the late 90s with its last change in the year 2000. If you click on the site, this is what you'll see. A gray stone hallway greets you and appears to be in motion. It blurs around the edges and begs you to come closer. There's something off about the presentation. It feels like it's forcing you to come closer and you can't fight it. Near the center of the hallway is a picture frame. It's hard to make out exactly what it is. The dark shapes and odd pairings make it seem like a monster of some kind. There's a spiral form on the image. It appears to be a painting. You can stare at this all day, but there is one other option. You can click the image. You now zoom into the image, which appears to be a woman with black wild shapes for hair. She doesn't look human. White text will greet you with a simple but ominous message. Gandalf is busy. Please go away. Further clicking on the image doesn't do anything. This is Gandalf.com, an internet anomaly that has stumped users since its inception. There really isn't a whole lot else to go off of here either. No one has come any closer to cracking the code of what this might mean. However, that hasn't stopped people from trying. The website has been a common topic on the Internet Mysteries subreddit. There have been some leads to follow, but only one that matters. The man behind the website has been found, a man named Dan Cowper. Unfortunately, just finding the man wasn't enough, as he hasn't responded to any inquiries into what Gandalf.com might mean. The website is so interesting, but the story feels less so. Still a cool and potentially creepy website. Too bad it didn't live up to its potential. Well, maybe something will come of it all someday. This website will require some backstory to understand what it is and why it exists. For now, let's explore what the website has to offer. Hour of the Time, or HOT for short, is listed as the #1 source of truth on the internet. That's a bold claim to make. Immediately to the right of the title is an ad for what looks to be a book about Oklahoma City. Or not. It cycles to talking about the OKC bombing, a tragic event that took place in the 90s. Hour of the Time. The quest for the truth begins here. This is the motto of the website and a promise. You can probably already start to gauge what this website's story might be, just from this quote and the book mentioned above. But let's keep going. Below all this is another quote. Listen to everyone, read everything, believe nothing unless you can prove it in your own research. The second quote is attributed to someone named William Cooper. We are greeted by a picture of a woman and 2 kids. Another quote from William Cooper accompanies it. God bless my family. I love my wife and children more than life itself. Everything I do is for the future of my children. They may not understand why I have sacrificed so much, why I am so dedicated to this work, but someday they will. I want them to know they are the most important people in my life, and how very, very much I love them. What work is Cooper talking about here? From context clues, we can see that he is a self-proclaimed truth seeker. He is someone who says to only trust facts that you can verify. That's usually the correct way to go about doing research. But what work and what truth is Cooper seeking? The rest of the site has times for the Hour of the Time shortwave broadcasts, which no longer exist. There's also a transcript website, which doesn't work. Below that section is a biography of William Cooper. There are 2 more quotes to go along with it. Learn the history behind William Cooper, the most dangerous radio host in America. William Cooper is the most dangerous radio host in America, Rush Limbaugh, during his broadcast quoting from a White House memo shortly after the Oklahoma City bombing. If you haven't picked up on it yet, this is the website of a man who used to be a broadcast host and also a conspiracy theorist. William Cooper is actually very well known in conspiracy circles. He even wrote a book that circulated heavily in the scene, and he was also a major influence on Alex Jones. Before we get into more about who William Cooper is, let's hear what this website dedicated to him has to say first. William Cooper was brought up in an Air Force family and claims to have graduated from a Japanese high school. He claims that this is where his worldview was built while traveling around the world when growing up. He then served with the Air Force for a time before joining the Navy during Vietnam. During this time, he held a secret clearance. Due to this, he claimed to have seen documents linking the government to aliens, the Knights Templar, and a secret world government covering it all. This would come later, though. First, he mentions his military service. Cooper was a QM1, Quartermaster First Class. He would then go to college for a degree in photography. He then established a few businesses in Long Beach, California, both of which were successful, at least according to this website, but I couldn't verify any of that. This would lead him to make a few documentaries covering typical conspiracy topics. One was about the Kennedy assassination, which is always a popular topic in conspiracy circles. Those takes were completely different than most of what's already out there. The other is about alien spacecrafts being crafted in secret black projects by the government. This is also where the topic of the webpage finally comes in. He was the host of the Hour of the Time broadcast, a conspiracy radio show that he ran from his home in Arizona. It was on Monday through Thursday evenings. William Cooper is also an author, having written the prolific Behold a Pale Horse. This book is very popular within militia groups in the US for its portrayal of the government as an enemy of the people, one that could only be fought with violence. A violent rhetoric that would have a lasting effect on several conspiracy groups operating today in the United States. Another book was published under the supervision of William, but not written by him. This book uses a conspiracy that he perpetuated though. It was called Oklahoma City, Day 1. It is supposed to be an accurate description of what, according to the author, actually happened during the OKC bombing in 1995. Shortly after that bombing, a White House memo was read out naming William Cooper as the most dangerous radio host in America. This is a title that William Cooper held dearly. The reason he was named this is because the person behind the bombing was heavily influenced by the Hour of the Time broadcast and William Cooper. He was a fan, and the conspiracies played a part in what brought him to commit the terrorist attack. The biography then names his family and a few friends, claiming that William Cooper is fighting for truth and freedom for all people. This would be the last line in the biography if it wasn't for an update at the very bottom. Update: Bill was killed by the Apache County Sheriff's Department during a raid on his home in November of 2001. He is now buried on a hill in Eagar, Arizona. This was the end of one of the most prolific conspiracy theories of all time. There's honestly so much more to this man and the things he believed. There's a whole 349-page FBI document about the man and everything he's done. It's something I'd like to make an entire video on someday, so let's get back to the site for now. There isn't more to see on the website itself. It does link to other pages, one being an updated version of the Hour of the Time hosting site. The last update on the modern site was from 2018. It has a few things, but most of these links are empty. I can't find the transcripts or past broadcasts either. After a bit more digging, I was able to find the MP3 files for every broadcast, just about. These can be viewed online and you don't need to download them. There are 1,926 broadcasts to watch, most covering conspiracies ranging from climate change to flying saucers. There are also quite a few files missing, and some just don't have MP3s attached. So not all of them were properly archived. This site is a digital grave for a man who thought the world was different than it was presented. I'm not sure who is paying to keep this website going, but I'm guessing it's his family or a friend of his. There's a copyright date at the bottom going from 1999 to 2002, which is around the time when Cooper died. There's not a whole lot more to see on the website besides that though. Let's keep looking and see what else the internet is hiding. A piece of the internet that disturbingly is still accessible today is the Heaven's Gate website. This website belongs to a cult by the same name. Before we move on to the site, we should probably talk about the cult a little bit. In 1974, two people came together to found a new religious movement. These two were named Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, but within the cult they were called T and Doe. They began spreading their religion, which has been described as a mixture of Christian millennialism, New Age, and weirdly enough, UFOology. By 1976, they had recruited around 24 members to their group, which is when they stopped most of their recruiting and took on an almost hermetic lifestyle. The main belief that members of Heaven's Gate looked to was the idea that they would someday become extraterrestrial beings that would be the next level of the human race. They would become immortal and eventually make their way to heaven. This was the core belief of the cult, and one that people seemed eager to believe. Eventually, one of the leaders of the cult, Nettie, would pass away due to cancer. This caused some wavering in the beliefs of a few. This is when Applewhite explained that she had simply ascended, and in order to do so, they would have to leave their human bodies behind. This was seen as a shedding of a cocoon of sorts. So the only way to the next level, or heaven, was to die and leave your vessel behind. This reasoning was enough for the members to quell their fears. They would continue in their cult activities, some of which were taking on more of the UFOology side than the Christian one. This would all come to a head in 1997 when the 39 members of the cult including Applewhite, would commit mass ascension together. The ascension was done to coincide with the comet passing over the Earth. They believed they would be ascended to a spaceship that was following closely behind the comet. The bodies of those ascended were discovered when a former member of the group showed up at the house. He only came because they had sent him a letter. He called the police, and they found that every member had conducted a sort of ritual before ascending. Bags were found over almost all the members' heads. They had taken phenobarbital mixed with applesauce or pudding and chased it with vodka before lying in bed to complete their ascension. This event made the news and was seen as a sign that the UFO cult was gone. That leaves this website. The Heaven's Gate website was used as a recruiting tool for the cult and as a place to keep information. The website was actually updated the same day that the mass ascension took place. The title had changed to Haley Bopp, the name of the comet, with a message about what had just transpired. Quote, "Whether Haley Bopp has a companion or not is irrelevant from our perspective. However, its arrival is joyously very significant to us at Heaven's Gate. The joy is that our older member in the evolutionary level above human, the Kingdom of Heaven, has made it clear to us that Haley Bopp's approach is the marker we've been waiting for. The time for the arrival of the spacecraft from the level above human to take us home to their world. In the literal heavens. Our 22 years of classroom here on planet Earth is finally coming to conclusion. Graduation from the human evolutionary level. We are happily prepared to leave this world and go with T's crew. If you study the material on this website, you will hopefully understand our joy and what our purpose here on Earth has been. You may even find your boarding pass to leave with us during this brief window. We are so very thankful that we have been recipients of this opportunity to prepare for membership in their kingdom, and to experience their boundless caring and nurturing. According to Wikipedia, there were 2 members that were told not to ascend with everyone else. Instead, they were told to update the website and keep it updated after they were gone. It was never stated beyond that what the purpose of their mission was, but it can be assumed that they wanted others to eventually find the site and follow in their cult's footsteps. One line is what really gets to me, though. You may even find your boarding pass to leave with us during this brief window. They were asking others to follow suit with the ascension, during the time frame when the site was updated. An invitation to follow them into the darkness of death. Now we can continue exploring the website. This is what it looks like now, and what it looked like back in 1997. The Heaven's Gate logo is large on the right and is an image on top of the starry background. A red alert sits at the top along with where their message resides below the logo. Further down you'll find a series of links. The first link leads to an intro for the cult as well as an excerpt from their book, which you can also find on the website. This one reads, 2,000 years ago, the crew of members of the Kingdom of Heaven, who are responsible for nurturing gardens, determined that a percentage of the human plants of the present civilization of this garden, Earth, had developed enough that some of those bodies might be ready to be used as containers for soul deposits. Upon instruction, a member of the Kingdom of Heaven then left behind his body in that next level. Similar to putting it in a closet like a suit of clothes that doesn't need to be worn for a while. Came to Earth and moved into, or incarnated into, an adult human body, or vehicle, that had been prepped for this particular task. The body that was chosen was called Jesus. The member of the Kingdom of Heaven who was instructed to incarnate into the body did so at his father's, or older member's, instruction. He moved into, or took over, that body when it was 29 or 30 years old, at the time referred to as the baptism of John the Baptist. The incarnating event was depicted as the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove, Luke 3:22. That body, named Jesus, was tagged in its formative period to the receptacle of the next level representative. And even just that tagging gave that vehicle some unique awareness of its coming purpose. Essentially what they're saying is that humans were put on Earth to be nurtured so that one day they could die and join the next level, as they called it. They even claim that Jesus was the first member of their order to do such a thing, with specific sections of the Bible being quoted here. This is also where they would get their nickname of the UFO cult, as a lot of their writings and beliefs would be based on extraterrestrials and the space around them. They also believed that select members would come down and be the ones to allow others to follow them to heaven. Most of the symbols they use on their website revolve entirely around space, from the starry background to the comet flying above. In their next link, it kind of shows more of what the cult believed. Here they have a statement by an ET. The claim they make here is that the 2 oldest members were actually extraterrestrials that were inhabiting these bodies. Reading through the rest of this page is just more of the same, claiming that they are aliens that came to Earth to nurture others who would be like them. even going as far as to say that these individuals have been picked from birth, and they were just now ready to join them. There's some pretty dark stuff to sift through here, especially if you have the full story of what they would eventually do. Nurturing souls to take with them sounds more like tricking others into following them into their deaths. Continuing through this site, you can find the entire book, including a copyright that places it in 1996. The entire book is a bit of a read, but it's all there if you want to check it out. Not that you'd learn much other than the cult's belief systems. Finally, at the bottom of this page are two important links. One is the cult's opposition to taking one's life, and the other is essentially a final note. Firstly, they say that taking one's own life is to turn away from the next level, or heaven. Which is kind of strange, since in the very next line it says that in order to ascend, you must leave your body behind by your own means. Leaving that as it was, there's also this page to look at. It's the Heaven's Gate Away Team's Ascension note. This tells you everything that went down that day, how it was all orchestrated and carried out. They claim that you can't get into the kingdom of heaven through being a good person and dying of natural causes. Instead, you need to have that life taken by a member of the highest level, which consisted of the cult leaders only. The reality of this website's continued existence is a bit baffling. The reason it exists can't fully be determined, but it has been speculated that it was a recruitment tool, as I mentioned before. Even so, the website seems to have failed its purpose, as the movement has all but died out. When the members died that day, they took the religion with them. All that's left is this relic of a website, a truly dark piece of human history, and now, a dark piece of the internet. One that anyone can enter, no need to visit the deep web. And to make it all that much darker, there are also tapes of the events of that day, the transcripts of which you can find at the bottom of the website. Read at your own discretion. While exploring the old web, I found something that is a product of its time. This is SensationBot, a chatbot that you can hold a conversation with. The website is rudimentary and lacks any sort of flair, but it offers 6 different chat options for us to try out. I've encountered a few chatbots before. This wasn't my first, but it was far older than any I've tried. Maybe they'll have some insight into the world of AI that I never knew existed. First, we have general chat. Let's ask it some questions. So this bot isn't the most intelligent. It hardly responds to anything I say. It claimed to be Homer Simpson as a joke, then told me its name was ShimmerBot, which is the newer version of SensationBot, I guess. I then asked it about YouTube. It said that it watches a lot of cat videos. I had to immediately follow this up with a question about Ben. It didn't have an answer about Ben. It just told me that the Earth wasn't flat. Thanks, I guess. I asked if Ben drowned, and it again didn't answer me. It just told me that it was designed to laugh or something. I asked it to tell me a joke, and it gave me a profound speech about knowing the truth about something. Something that it couldn't tell me. I did ask, but it continued to not tell me about this secret truth only it knew. It then asked me where I am. I repeated the same question back to it, and it told me that the world is beautiful, and it has no idea where it came from. Just that it knows where it's going. Another profound answer. I left this chat and checked out the next tab. This one was described as an awkward bot. It asked about my internet friends first. A strange starting question, for sure. Then it told me that it wanted to walk with me in the mornings. Asked where we were going, and it answered that it just wanted to take a walk with me. The bot again asked me where I lived. I told it that I wasn't going to dox myself. It responded that I was the bot and that it was the human. You got me there, I guess. The bot and I got stuck on a loop of asking me to ask it questions so we could get to know each other better. Every question led to another question, though. The next chat was for 18+, and it took about 2 sentences before I left it on read. Which led me to Smack Talk Bot. This one didn't even respond to a single thing I said. It just hurled insults at me. It even told me a yo mama joke, which was pretty telling of the period the site was active. There was one more chatbot function called 2000s Chat, which is supposed to mimic how a person in the 2000s would have typed in a chat room. This link didn't work though, so I was left with a group of chats that didn't work properly. There is a history section on the website that shows the progress made over the years. The bot was created in 1993 and was even more basic than it is now. The most used phrase the bot would use was, "I don't understand," which seemed to act as a failsafe if the chat wasn't able to read the words being typed to it. The next update came in 95. The bot didn't get much better, but it was able to have a conversation with itself. This is a huge step for chatbots, but not impressive by today's standards. The updates continued into the early 2010s. The bot was considered 100% operational, but it wasn't perfect. The future was supposed to take this bot into modern tech, but it appears to have been abandoned some time ago. There hasn't been any updates since July of 2010. The FAQ section goes over some basic questions, but there's not much more to see on the site. It's an interesting novelty, but with how advanced ChatGPT and other AI services are, this could never stand a chance. The world has come so far since Cleverbot even. One day, I'll get a bot to answer my questions about Ben though. While exploring the world of necro-cities, I came across a fascinating website. Here is Adrift. There's this boat that floats on the psychedelic stream of water. The rapid colors and shifting of the sky create a captivating visual. The only thing that needs to be added is the music. For some reason, there is no music to go along with this visual cacophony. I'm not sure if the music just isn't playing for me or what. So I found some songs that could match this. Here are the options I have so far. Other than being a very interesting screensaver, I can't find anything else of interest on this page. This is just another look into some of the creations the internet has hidden from us. So let's move on to the next one. Our next website is called washedashore.com. It's a personal website for a man named Ben Disco. It's a pretty simple website, like many of the personal websites of the 90s. Its final update was in 2012, with a life story update being added. Browsing the site tells the story of an interesting man. Ben was interested in the internet on a philosophical level. He talks about it in a few of his posts. He considers the internet to be a place, a cyberspace. The real interests of Ben lied in the virtual. He has a huge collection on virtual terrain called the Virtual Terrain Project. On this website, you'll find all sorts of virtual creations, from buildings to plants. It's all in high detail as well. Ben seemed to have a knack for technology and wanted to create a virtual world. All the assets are free for educational purposes as well. He claims that the assets have already helped students to learn how to implement 3D terrain into their projects. A lot of this stuff is pretty impressive, especially for the period. There's so much to look at here, but what about the rest of the website? There's another section on virtual humans. Essentially, Ben dreamed of a creation where a real-time physical simulation of a human interacting with its virtual environment was viable. From 95 to 97, these seemed like impossibilities, though now there are simulations that do this. I'm not sure what his exact idea of interaction was. He admits in the notes section that these things already exist in movies and games, but it's not to the extent of a simulation. Everything has to be pre-programmed for them to be interacted with. His dreams seem to be a fully functioning AI simulation, where the virtual humans can interact freely with their environment. Ben overall seems to have a fascination with new technologies. Many of the pages here talk about different technologies emerging and in theory. Some are things that never took off, while others are in existence today. There are a lot of links to personal info and affairs. He lists his entire family tree on the website. He also has pictures of himself at various ages. There is clearly a lot of love put into this personal site. The life story is pretty interesting, but a very long read. He's led an interesting life, and all that is captured forever here on the internet. Located 12 miles from Interstate 15 in the Mojave Desert is a phone booth. This lone phone booth is riddled with bullet holes, and the phone book has been removed. Strangely though, the phone still works. There are no buildings for miles. There's nothing even close to civilization near the phone booth. Yet, it still exists, in a place that is hardly habitable by the wildlife that calls it home. This is the Mojave phone booth, a spectacle that blew up in the 90s thanks to a website. This website. It's called Deuce of Clubs, and the entire website is focused on the discovery of this phone booth out in the middle of nowhere in the Mojave Desert. The website itself is pretty archaic, looking like many of the websites from the 90s and early 2000s. It has a black background with mainly green and yellow text. The occasional red text grabs your attention, and this is done on purpose for pieces that are supposed to be seen, such as updates and changes. The story goes like this. The creator of the website, called Deuce here, talks about something that he'd heard of in 1997. While attending a concert held at a local club for a band named Girl Trouble, he obtained a zine from the band's drummer. Now, a zine is a self-published magazine, usually created by one person or a small group of people. These zines usually are created for a specific niche and only circulate locally. They're produced by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. This specific zine was created by someone in California. It was called Wig Out, and they obtained a new issue of it when they attended a different concert that same year. This issue had something unique about it. There was a fan write-in with an interesting find that the writer had made recently. This is what it said, word for word. Dear Wig Out, recently I spotted a small dot with the word telephone beside it on a map in the Mojave Desert, 15 miles from the main interstate in the middle of nowhere. Intrigued, I donned a cheap brown serape and a pair of wingtips and headed out to find it in my old Jeep. After many hours, I do find it. The glass is shot out and the phone book is missing, but it works. Apparently this booth was put in after World War II for the use of a nearby mine, which ceased operation in the 60s. Why the local phone company keeps it operational is anybody's guess. A nearby rancher told me that in the 70s, they replaced the old rotary-style phone with push buttons because the sheep were having trouble dialing. Oh, if you're interested, the number is 555-555-6969. Let it ring a long time if you want a response. Deuces then attached a recording device to his home phone and started to tape himself calling the number for the Mojave Desert phone booth every day. He figured that he would eventually get someone on the other end, especially if he was calling it every day and at different times. As the line rang, he would state his name and the time of the phone calls. He would even remark if his friends were around him during his calls. The plan was for him to make phone calls every day until someone actually picked up. Whether this would take days, months, or years, he was in for the long haul. Luckily, it wouldn't take that long, as nearly a month had passed and he got a busy tone. He was so excited that he continued to try and call back furiously. Eventually the phone rang and someone picked up. The first thing he asked is if they were in the Mojave Desert. They answered yes, and so began his expedition into exactly what the Mojave Desert phone booth actually was. The person who picked up the phone was a woman by the name of Lorraine. She actually lived in the area, which was strange, since this area was the middle of the desert with no one nearby. She had lived there off and on for most of her life. She used the phone to make the occasional phone call, which was a few times a month. There was a mine out in the Mojave Desert, a cinder mine that was owned by Lorraine's family and had been for generations. They would mine cinder used for construction. The house was so far from any town that this was the only way they could have a phone at all. It was constructed specifically for the miners that worked in the area back in the 60s. The whole conversation was recorded, and you can find a transcript of it on the website. Here you can also find when he starts trying to search for the phone. He knows of its existence, but not its exact location. On the next post, he calls another person, an author on several books about the Mojave Desert, named Dennis Casebeer. This is when Deuce learns of the many small towns that litter the Mojave Desert region. He was provided with a map of the area, which was Xeroxed to him by Dennis. He wanted to make a trip out there, and he was determined to do it. The next post details their first trip to the phone booth. They arrived in Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. They rented a vehicle and started their trek towards I-15. They arrived and started towards where the phone booth was supposed to be. There are pictures of the places they stopped during their visit. The first is of the mailbox for Lorraine's house, which he leaves a note in. Then he finds a sign leading towards the Icon cinder mine. They found this sign as the sun was going down, meaning they would be driving in the dark very soon. At last, the site they'd been hoping for. He was at the Mojave Desert phone booth. It was in almost complete disrepair like mentioned above, but of course, the phone still worked. The first call he made in the phone booth was the one to Dennis, the author. He explained where he was coming from, and the two laughed. Dennis explained that he was already going to mention him in the next newsletter he sent out, but now he would add that he actually made the trip out there. They would make several follow-up trips, all shown on the website. They would even make a trip with a fan at the site. The second trip saw them carrying a bust that they left at the phone booth, along with a sticker of the Girl Trouble band logo. Instead of camping elsewhere, they decided to camp just outside the booth. These are the pictures of some of their later trips. There's a section about a contest they were running. They buried a bunch of stuff near the phone booth site and asked readers to go and find it. If they did, and sent in the pictures, they'd receive a prize as well as a mention on the website itself. Following this, there were dozens of visitors to the phone booth. People would leave stuff there for new people to find. This included a blanket and a plaque someone made using a stencil kit. The Mojave Desert phone booth was becoming a bit of a tourist destination. During their fourth trip to the booth, they sat and took calls from people from all over the world. These are some of the people that called in. There are 171 names and locations listed on this trip, some from as far as New Zealand. There were even some calls from people claiming that they were on their way to the phone booth right now. During this trip is when it would start to snow. It was kind of a serene sight. Snow on a lone phone booth located in the middle of nowhere. It looks like something that you would see while looking for liminal images online. The next visit was planned for July of 1999, but that visit never came. Instead, it just says, "Coming soon, forever." Clicking next just takes you to an overview of the entire Mojave Desert phone booth saga. Here we can also see a book that the site's creator has written about his adventures. Sadly, the phone booth was removed on May 17, 2000. It was removed by the National Park Service and Pacific Bell. The phone number was also retired along with it. The booth was removed for claims of the negative environmental impact caused by visitors to it. The phone booth would inspire a movie with the same name. The movie won quite a few awards, but it's not something I've seen myself, so I can't comment on it. Maybe I'll give it a watch after I finish reading the book. There's nothing quite like finding a place that feels so out of place. A lone phone booth in a seemingly abandoned area, working and holding some pretense of a culture in an area that was slowly dwindling. Phone booths don't exist anymore, not really. With 2 million in use in 1999, down to only 5% of that now. Many wouldn't even know what the purpose of a phone booth even was. We have cell phones and the internet now. It's just a piece of technology from a bygone era. That doesn't take away from the feeling you get when looking at one of these. Like a time capsule that captures the era so perfectly. Very few sites can instantly take you back to the moment they were relevant. It captures a moment in history. This website is a time capsule as well, into the world of the old internet. It was started in 1996 with the express interest of one man trying to find something that caught his interest. A phone booth, seemingly out of place, alone in a desert. This then led to a website that you can still find something interesting in today. These are the kinds of finds I want to come across while searching the abandoned side of the internet. Our first find is this website called timecube.com. Timecube is a theory that was created by a man by the name of Gene Ray. He put forth the belief that the Earth goes through 4 simultaneous 24-hour days in a single day. This comes from a man that claims to be the wisest man on the Earth and also a god in some cases. Gene created the website timecube.com in 1997 and used it to spread his beliefs and conspiracies about the world. He believed that the world's scientists were spreading lies and also refusing to acknowledge his theories. He even went as far as claiming that he offered any professor or scientist $10,000 to disprove his theories. But no one ever tried, lending validity in his mind. The website was last updated in 2005 before it sat untouched until 2016. The website was shut down that year and was almost gone from the internet entirely. But it was saved thanks to the Wayback Machine and is now back up in all its strange glory. This is the website, and it looks very similar to how it would have looked in 1997. The site consists almost entirely of rambling text about how the world is lying and how educated adults are wrong. There's a few references to belly buttons and mothers, but most of it revolves around how stupid people are for not believing his theory. A lot of this man's ramblings are about how the cube relates to humans, the earth, and disproves theistic gods. In fact, a lot of the ramblings are against religion and proving them wrong. This is because he believes his time cube theory already disproves the existence of a god, and points to the inability of modern science to teach the right things for the future of the world, the children. He wasn't just anti-religion though. He was specifically anti-Semitic, as he had several things to say about the Jewish people and Christians. Not only that, but he was racist, sexist, and homophobic. All these mentions were removed in the updated site that can be explored today, but are still intact in the Wayback Machine version. His biggest claim was that the US is being controlled by different race groups at different times, saying that it started with Native Americans, then white Europeans, then African Americans, and then Asians. He claims that each group will have control over the US for some reason, which has nothing to really do with his cube theory, though maybe it has everything to do with it, as a lot of the ramblings seem to lead to other sections without warning. Continuing through the site, you'll see that he believes that the world is separated into differing polar opposites: men and women, masculinity and femininity. If they came together, they would cancel each other out, according to him, because he says the math told him so. Math that he doesn't really show, just alludes to. The website is mostly just his rants about the time cube theory, one that equates to being the true meaning of life. This kind of conspiracy was something you'd stumble upon online back in the day and just continue on with your day, but now it's a true piece of internet history. The basic design of the website is something that comes straight from its era. The background is entirely made up of graphing paper that is warping at certain sections. The text is bold Times New Roman font that sits in the center of the page. The colors and placement of the images and links all represent their era. There's even a few primitive GIFs from the 90s, just alongside the text blocks. The formatting, or lack thereof, of many of the paragraphs really lends the credence of reading someone's wild rambling thoughts. Then at the bottom of the page, you're presented with links to other parts of the website. These only exist on the Wayback Machine version. The first one asks a question, "Are you Jewish?" which leads to a red screen before loading into a quote from the creator of the site where he quotes himself. A link below that is called "The Power Above God" and is another quote. This one says that there is a power above God, and that is the nature of his theory. He calls it the ineffable truth. The final words on this page are, "No genius has the wisdom of a cubic." Another link takes you to a clock face that goes to 16. He says that all clock faces are wrong. Clearly he wants us to interpret this as how the clock should be. There's no text to interpret this clock, and the context clues are limited here. That's really all there is to see on this website. There's a section that goes over how many website hits it received, which was around 274 million before they stopped counting. This is really only the beginning of the strange personal websites that individuals used to run back in the day. Gene passed away in 2015 at the age of 87. He left behind this strange website with very convoluted theories and some questionable belief systems as well as some general bigotry. Even if this theory was a little out there, at least it provided entertainment for those that explored the web back in the 90s. A true relic of the past, where people would create personal websites instead of using social media. It's really the only place where these kinds of wild theories still exist. Other corners of the internet don't really show this raw side to a person with no moderation. The website's design is lacking but charming in a way. It likely takes anyone back to its era. Timecube.com will likely live on for a while before fading further into obscurity. This next website is a lot less dark than the prior, but still falls on the stranger side of the internet. This site is called the Tarot of Sneezing, and it is almost exactly what you think it is. It's a website dedicated to the fetish of the sneeze. Now, if you're like me, you didn't know that sneezing was a fetish. Well, I guess anything and everything is a fetish. No matter how weird you think the internet is, you'll always find something that challenges that belief. Let's take a look at the site. The homepage has the Tarot of Sneezing at the top, along with a tissue box and 2 clickable images. They are the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. Going all in on the tarot theming. If you hover the Major Arcana, the middle image changes. It tells you what you'll find if you check out this link, which includes pictures, movie clips, fanfics, songs, comics, beginnings, and more. The other side is male and female stories, as well as sounds. The background of the website is this navy blue that doesn't really work with the vaguely blue text. And it's even worse with the side images with links. On the left side we have female pictures, male pictures, female movies, and male movies. Moving to the right side, we have male stories, male sounds, and female sounds. At the center is a note from the site creator, as well as the last time it was updated, and when it was created, those being 2003 and 1997 respectively. Now, all of this is strange as it is. We still need to actually click and follow the links. Let's start with the major arcana. There's a lot to unpack here, starting with the number of links you can click on, which is 22. That is a lot of sneezing media to explore, and definitely shows that 6 years of work this person did for the site. Let's click the first link, the beginnings. Now, this is rather uncomfortable already. There are links to dozens of kids' media, cartoons, movies, books, and TV shows that have a character being sick or sneezing. This claims that this is where many of the sneezing fetishes actually started. So they started when they were kids. The top quote is something else. Let me read it to you. In many cases, we don't remember what it was that started it. In other cases, we can't forget. This page is dedicated to stories, WAVs, pictures, accounts, concerning people's first introduction to liking sneezing. If you'd like to contribute something, please don't hesitate to. Even a simple story of the first time you can remember seeing someone sneeze or watching one on TV. Such stories bring comfort to many. That comfort can quickly turn to discomfort for others, which is the way a lot of these fetishes work, it seems. Continuing down the site, you can see they included moments from Sesame Street, Frosty the Snowman, and Puff the Magic Dragon. It's a little strange to read the recounting of people who enjoy sneezing, but I like to let people enjoy their, hobbies, as long as it doesn't hurt others. Keeping that in mind, the exploration of the site continues. The next section is fanfic, but I'll be skipping that for the sanity of my viewers. I already read through it, and it's a bit much. Following that is the picture gallery, which has loads of sneezing images that are more comical than arousing. The images are split once again between men and women, and the women have way more pictures. This includes images of actors that would have been popular in the 90s, including the X-Files main duo. There's historical images, edits, and some stock photos. Just a real interesting set of photos. Some of them are gross where you can see the sneeze particles, and well, that's that for the image section. There's a section about guys with colds that makes me cringe but also laugh. It features men that have colds and need to be taken care of, which might be more of the site's owner's personal interest than anything else. There are photos here as well, just not really sure what there is to look at. That's kind of the whole website. They have sounds for the sneezes as well as movies and where to find people sneezing in them. It's a very complete list that would be insanely large today if they'd kept up with the website. There are so many relics of the old internet here. The existence of this website is kind of all you need to know about the old internet. It was a time and place where anyone could upload anything online and be part of any subgroup they could imagine. Hobbies and interests like this only exist in small niches online, and maybe on Reddit. This was definitely a dive into a website that I wasn't expecting to offer so much content to anyone interested in its subject matter. I'm only interested in the historical side of the page though. Its existence is interesting to me, not its content. Mr. Lowe's wolf3d.co.uk is a fan page dedicated to the Wolfenstein 3D Dome. This site features everything an old or new fan of the game could ever need. The game's storyline, enemies, code editing, a walkthrough, and even cheats and hints. For an old website, it is easily maneuverable and packed with information. Under the About the Dome link, a brief history of how the page came to be is written. The Wolf 3D Dome page became what it is today through the merging of Mr. Lowe's homepage and Parafriction's coding homepage. Mr. Lowe was a popular add-ons archive that started in 1999, while Parafictions was a tutorial page for the game's source code. The two owners of the popular Wolfenstein websites began discussing a website that would combine both add-ons and tutorials. Originally, they planned on naming the site High Command, but changed it to what it is today. After several emails and calls, the website mainly comprised content from the original two websites. After much work, Brian Lowe and Parafiction finished their website and created original content for it together. Now, even new players today have a place to enjoy and find tutorials about their favorite game. The first website I found was something a bit unexpected. First, a little context. In the mid-2000s, there was a movement online that captivated the teens and young adults of the time. It was a vampire movement, one that had people believing that they were in fact vampires. While vampires had always been a rather popular creature, the real reason for the surprising amount of popularity came from a book series and movie that released around that time, Twilight. Twilight and the vampire craze as a whole is a rabbit hole that I was inadvertently stumbling down, and as much as I wanted to see where it led fully, I decided to leave that for my other series. But in saying that, I did stumble across an old website worth looking at. This is vampirewebsite.net. It's a site that was created sometime around 2009. In it, the creator starts off by explaining why they are a real vampire. Quote, "If you are one of those people that believe that credentials are what determine how much of a real vampire someone is, then fine, here are mine. However, credentials aren't what make a person a real vampire. When it comes to being a vampire, you either are a real vampire or you're not." Actually, after writing this, it seems more like a life story, but trust me, this is only part of my life. At 14 years old, I was developing a strong interest in vampires. I had no thoughts that I might be one, but I always instinctively knew what things in vampire movies were BS and what was in fact real. I got told many times by many people that it was all BS, because real vampires are not real. I always told them that they were wrong. Something in me just knew it, and knew the truth. 2 years later, I started noticing traits that I always thought were the true facts about real vampires starting to develop in me. At this time I was 16. I began working with these traits and trying to make the best of the bad ones and use the good ones to their fullest potential. This included being on the swim team as well as the after-school soccer team, while pulling A's and B's in all of my classes, except English and history, because history class was my first class of the day and I was too tired to stay awake, due to me always being awake at night. Not to mention at this age, I had started my own coven, technically making me a priest. This is only the start of the life of the story of a man named Stephen. Stephen believed with all his heart that he was a vampire and that real vampires existed in our world. They were not like the movies and books had portrayed them. They were more grounded in reality, but still supernatural or more preternatural. So far it sounds like we have a heavy LARPer with some deep goth tendencies. The usual for the vampire community. He continues his explanation. Jumping to when I was 20 to 21 years old, at this time I was sure that if real vampires existed, that I must be one. But for some odd reason, whenever asked, and I was getting asked increasingly more frequently, I never said that I was one with confidence. I only said that if real vampires existed, that I must be one. To give an idea, this is the point where everyone believes in full confidence that they are one. That is in the group called the vampire community. Their delusions are fed by others in that group is falsely convinced that they are real vampires as well, which by my account is 98% of them. At 23, I knew I was a real vampire. I was able to do everything that anyone who referred to themselves as a real vampire could do. I had all the traits. I was able to say yes to all but 2 of the traits on my website that they had. That included the ones that I could really tell by feel were vampires. Those of you who know what I mean by that feel know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't, I really try to help the best I can with this page. It was great. I was completely developed and I was doing really cool stuff. I was even doing some stuff that people still try to tell me is myth, like biting for blood painlessly. Easy to teach, takes a little practice to get good at, sort of like chess. There's something really important to note here. Well, a few things actually. Firstly, within the online vampire community, there was always a lot of infighting. Every group believed that they were vampires and that other groups were posers or role players. For some reason, each group believed themselves to be the true vampire cult, while the others were fakes. While researching this page, I actually found a lot of other sites that seek to discredit this specific page, which I'll get into once we're done exploring this website. There's still plenty to see. There's a link mentioned in the paragraph, and it takes you to the traits of a vampire. Let's go take a look at those now. The page is titled How to Find a Real Vampire. These all might start to sound a bit odd for those who haven't consumed any vampire media, but if you have, then these will all sound very cliche. These are the traits of a real vampire. There will be a dark colored ring around the iris of their eye. Every vampire has this trait. Not everyone that has this trait is a vampire. There is generally a noticeably different color surrounding the pupil. A real vampire breathing will be slightly shallow at all times except for when they are extremely excited or upset. A real vampire's heart rate usually will match the person's heart rate and speed that is next to them while they are sleeping. They will be able to change your moods and feelings to however they are feeling at the time they are around you. Usually done without the vampire knowing that it's happening. Babies and cats are very sensitive to this effect. Whenever you even glance at them, a real vampire will know that you are looking at them, usually knowing as you're turning your eyes to look at them, even if all you were doing is glancing around the room. This automatically causes them to look right at you, at the same exact moment that you were looking at them. You will think that they are staring at you. Usually causes nervousness. Don't be nervous. A real vampire can't help it. And if you talk to your friends, they will think that they were being stared at nonstop as well, which you know is impossible. No one can stare at multiple people at the same time, let alone a whole room of people, unless in some cases the vampire is extremely distracted. Their aura will usually have a heavy, thick, dark feel to it. Real vampires, even if they are energy users, don't tend to sense this from other real vampires half as well as normal people do, seeing that they have adjusted to feeling this from themselves. Their aura will have dark clouds of energy in it. Sickness will happen to real vampires usually not as often as it will to normal people. Just they don't stay as sick for as long, and it doesn't really affect them nearly as much. Most real vampires take on aspects of the animal they admire the most. This includes strong mental traits as well as some subtle physical traits. Whatever type of animal this happens to be will react differently when around a real vampire. General first reaction is awareness, and confusion, curiosity, followed by a sort of mix between how they react to a human and another animal, like them. 99% of the time reacting in a quick friendship. Real vampires will always be able to find a shadow and will prefer to stand in the shadow as opposed to in the sun. Doesn't sound too abnormal until they start finding shadows in the middle of the night and preferring to be in those shadows as well. Also, when accidentally banging their hand, elbow, shin, leg, etc. on a hard object, they will always say ouch for show if they think someone saw it happen, to appear normal. When in actuality, they felt no pain at all. They didn't even know it happened minus knowing their body part touched something. Their bedroom will usually be the coldest and darkest room in the house. Electronics that are around a real vampire, often such as watches, computers, MP3 players, cell phones, and other electronics, tend to malfunction in really weird ways. Real vampires tend to be very charismatic to some, while having the complete opposite effect on other people. Real vampires tend to be extremely sensitive in sunlight and other bright lights, resulting in discomfort and in most cases, a migraine. These are the signs of a real vampire. Unfortunately for them, all of these have sources from fictional media, some dating as far back as Dracula, though some don't have an exact source, so they might have been created within the community itself. As far as inspirations for a lot of these traits, they are pulled from other vampire websites. More or less, these are all decided upon by the community. A lot of them come from Buffy, Twilight, Dracula, and other vampire media. I can't pull exact sources on everything, but if my memory serves, then a lot of these can be traced to some form of vampire media. The list ends by telling you where to find a real vampire. It says that there isn't a specific place where vampires like to hang out, just that to find them you might need to become more nocturnal. He continues the paragraph by stating that having all these traits could be a coincidence, but then uses a quote from Jung to point out the improbability of that. At the very bottom of the page is a link to clubs. You are brought to a map of the US, and you can click on any of the states to find a vampire-friendly club near you. They even include times when they meet, as well as the location of the club. I have no idea if people actually meet at these clubs, and I couldn't find a source for it. Clicking on the one closest to me, I found that the clubs had all been closed. Going back to the front page of the website is the explanation for vampires' existence. This is explained that there's a blood-infected VHERV, or retrovirus, that can be spread through blood only. This is how new vampires are created, and also explains the existence of vampires in the first place. They're supposed to be the next evolutionary level for humans, as vampires are basically just humans but better in this world. Linked below are a bunch of studies on retroviruses, but nothing to do with the one that he named, which at the end of the day doesn't really prove anything. It just proves that studies on retroviruses are being done. Further down the page is a section on why the world can't know about vampires, or why the government wouldn't want them to know about them. Fear, hatred, envy, resources, religion, and for the safety of the vampires. Fear that humans will react with hatred and envy, leading to vampires being prosecuted like some kind of witch trials. That's kind of all I wanted to look at for this site, as there's a lot of repeating information as well as some really boring exposition dumps. There's a section on vampire slayers, a section on the code that vampires must follow, and a section on how to tell if you're a real vampire. If anyone in the comments finds out if they are, please let me know. Moving on to our next game, we have an MMO of sorts called Continent of the Ninth Seal. It's an action MMO that comes to us from South Korea. I found this game while browsing Reddit for abandoned games. It was a recommendation, but I wasn't expecting much of it. There are a lot of games that come from Asia that die in the West. For one reason or another, these games come out and receive very little support. They just sort of exist in a vacuum where there's a fan base in the East, but none in the West. C9, as the game is now known, is a dungeon crawling MMO, kind of. It falls into a lot of early 2010s MMO trappings, and looks very similar to other dead MMOs. The game was published by South Korean studio Webzen and Volof, and published by Volof. This all is according to Steam. The game is an action-adventure MMO, kind of, hybrid similar to games like Black Desert Online, but a better comparison would be Dungeon Fighters Online, for a reason I'll be discussing later. The first thing I want to mention about this game is the number of players currently online. On Steam there are 0 players online, except for me, so there's 1 now. That is according to Steam, as I saw some chat messages appear in the chat box, but never saw any of those players. The max amount of players that play daily according to mmopopulation.com is 185. That number will fluctuate, as when I was playing it said there were 10 players online, though I never saw any of them. These numbers might appear abysmal on the surface, but considering most of the game can be played solo, it's not the end of the world for them. Let's talk about the actual game now. Firstly, you'll need to make an account and then a character. I usually like to run either a speedy character like a thief or a rogue, or a melee magic character. In this case, the Spellblade seems right. Clicking on her, I saw that she was actually called a Witchblade, and the game did the thing that a lot of Eastern MMOs do. It made the classes gender-based. I had to play a female character, which isn't that big of a deal to me really. Though while I was making her, I realized this game definitely wanted to reach a certain demographic. The character creation tools were limited, and no matter what, you were making a Barbie, so to speak. She was perfect in every way, and the other faces didn't change much. It wasn't until I started the game that I realized exactly how sexualized they made the character. From the movement to the clothing choice, it was 100% what I expected from a South Korean game. Just like how Black Desert Online has insanely perfect looking characters, this game makes you have a beautiful character no matter what, which isn't really a problem honestly. I struggle making characters attractive, which is why I usually just make an ugly character. After making a character, you have to play a tutorial that teaches you the basics. But I somehow got stuck in this main town area and just dropped the tutorial. Now I was finally ready to start the game. You start in the town that you were supposed to save in the tutorial. There are NPCs that say some of the most NPC energy dialogue I've ever heard. Other than them, the town is free for you to explore. And this is when I found out that this isn't an open world MMO like WoW, BDO, or FF14. It was an instance-based one. Even so, the starting town had 0 other players to interact with. I wandered the empty streets and saw just NPCs staring blankly in whichever direction they were programmed to face. I did some of the basic quests and found that they were pretty uneventful like most MMOs early on. You just need to complete and collect as many as you could to level up your character and find new gear. This would be maybe okay if I wasn't completely alone out here. I was able to go to dungeons and collect loot, hoping to find some good looking gear for my character, but alas, she wasn't allowed to wear any clothes. Not really anyway. I continued to complete quests and kill mobs until I could hopefully explore the other towns. Maybe there were a few players in them. But what I found out was that you couldn't see other towns until reaching a certain level threshold, one that started at level 24 and went all the way up to 60. There were 4 other towns, but I would never see them as I was level 6, which took me an hour and a half to get to. All in all, there wasn't really much to explore anyways. Just another dying MMO, but one that feels like it hasn't fully been abandoned. There are updates still coming out. The game might have an audience in South Korea, but the NA audience has been apparently reduced to nothing, with not much to explore. The only other topic worth touching on would be the dungeons you have to explore and complete. They are very basic, at least the starting ones, which is kind of to be expected, though they were literally just hallways that led to nothing. You can complete each dungeon with combos and such to increase your score from D to S, I believe. At the end of the day though, there really isn't much to see. Maybe I'll have to return to it so I can see what the other towns are like, but if they're as dead as the starting one, I don't think it'll be really worth my time. I say we get to our next search. Gizmo's web home is a web page dedicated to a dog named Gizmo. The page is very simple and there's not much to explore here. A picture of Gizmo is at the top left, followed by bullet paws of information underneath him. Gizmo's a Pekingese born on December 9th, 1996, in Blue Rapids, Kansas. He was then driven to California at 10 weeks old and then adopted 2 weeks later. Gizmo loves Home Depot and going for car rides. There's a link called Some More of Gizmo's page, which features more pictures of Gizmo and more information. There's even a picture of Gizmo's big brother. Gizmo also has an email, which I doubt anyone checks anymore. Scrolling down further, a few pet web rings are listed. A Pekingese web, which has a broken link to a GeoCities Pets web ring, and a Petsburg Pups web ring. All of these web rings are owned by Gizmo, allegedly. This is an interesting way to immortalize your pet, albeit a little depressing. The website was last updated on November 11th, 1998. Rest in peace, Gizmo. In 1995, a game was released that would be the first of its kind. It was called Active Worlds, and was something completely unheard of at the time. It was a fully 3D chat room where users could interact in a virtual world using an avatar that represented who they were. The world was built of fully 3D models and worlds to explore. It also allowed users to create their own worlds to share with others. The website lost a lot of steam and quickly faded into obscurity, though it was never truly dead. The game, 28 years later, is still up and running. It's not something that many games or chat rooms from that time period can claim. Yet, here it is. Active Worlds, home of the 3D internet, a website that is as basic as it can be. In fact, it's so basic that the banner gives you zero idea of what this game might actually be. In the corner it says Active Worlds, Build 3D, Play, Chat. This sits at the opposite side of the Start, Services, Community Resources, and Help tabs. In the Services tab, you can actually buy space to build your own worlds. You essentially rent the space and you can do whatever you want with it. The pricing is a bit more than I expected. $32 a year gets you the smallest amount of space with 40,000 meters of 3D space to customize. The highest is at $990 a year for 4 million square meters of space. You can also purchase system development kits which can be used for creating your own various pieces of the game. It's actually more than I was expecting when I went to the website. The image is painted as a fully 3D game with endless opportunities, like a Roblox or Minecraft, just from a bygone era of the internet. The only link that we actually care about though is the download one. The downloads actually have multiple versions which account for what you have in your computer. It's kind of crazy that this website is even working at all. Let's download and see what this game chat room hybrid is really like. The download will take some time but not too long. Once downloaded, you'll need an account to access the game. That's easily done and now you're loaded into the world. You pick an avatar and are free to explore from there. For the era this was released, it's almost impressive. 3D objects are everywhere, but most of them have this dated look to them. It very much reminds me of old school RuneScape and other browser-based games from the early 2000s. There's also a flair of Gaia Online with how you're able to interact with others and essentially treat it like a fully 3D chat room. The game's controls aren't great, you move with the arrow keys and turning is a massive hassle. Everything feels slow, from the movement of the camera to the movement of your character. Even the loading of the worlds is incredibly slow, with assets needing to be loaded before you can fully explore any of the worlds. Speaking of the worlds, there are 213 for you to explore, but you don't need to go far to see what the game has to offer. Just in the starting world, Alpha World, you can see all sorts of creations. Walking around for a bit will lead you to some interesting locations. The first I checked out was the aquarium, which has some 3D models of fish swimming around endlessly in their tanks. The fish variety was rather minimal as well, with only dolphins and a single jellyfish. I also checked out the water parks, but was pretty underwhelmed by it. There really wasn't much to see. I started to explore the empty streets of the main hub of Active Worlds, and couldn't help but feel something familiar. Everything felt so eerie and out of place. There were places for people to hang out, but not a single soul in sight. It was just me and the empty builds of a world that had taken time for someone to create. Every step I felt like I was being followed and watched, but every time I looked, there was no one there. Empty and lifeless was all that I imagined as I kept walking down streets. The sound design is so uncanny that it didn't really pull me in, and instead made me feel uneasy. The first world I decided to jump into was called Mythopia. It said that there was someone else on the server with me, but I never encountered anyone there. Loading of the assets took forever, but once I was able to explore, I was kind of shocked at the detail of this world. There was music, sound effects, and plenty of places to explore. I found a train off to the side, which I wasn't expecting to work, which makes me right since it didn't seem to do anything. Though I'm not too familiar with how this game works, so it could have functioned and I just didn't know how to make it run. I started walking into the wilderness and found a room full of teleports. Essentially, people can create links to other parts of the world and place them on the map. You can interact with them to be brought to new places or even get links to websites not part of the game. I clicked one of the links and was sent to a Victorian village. This area took a second to load as well. There were thousands of assets used to create this little town, which was pretty impressive for what it was. These streets, as impressive as they were, turned out to be just as empty as the rest of the places I'd seen so far. Tall buildings with signs that claimed they were for something, but looking in the windows showed that they held nothing. The street lamps had candles in them, but it was the middle of the day, so they provided no ambiance. I continued through those streets with no sound to accompany me. It was getting more and more lonesome and unnerving, like I was in an unfinished place, where others weren't supposed to be. My first interaction with another user was when I went to their Christmas-themed world that was still under construction. That's right, people are still in this game building things. They asked how I was, and I asked where I was. They explained that this world belongs to another user named Lady Pippin, who apparently had builders that helped her create things. Following this topic, I continued asking about who Lady Pippin was and her importance to active worlds. This is when I found out that she had been a user and builder since 1999. She built some of the most impressive builds that the game had to offer. The user sent me some links and I was free to explore her other worlds, which I assumed would be a great place to get some insight into this game, and I was right. This is her crowning achievement. It's called Pippinville. It was named after her original username, so she might have changed it by now. When you load into her world, you are brought to Pippinville, Ground Zero, a starting point with links to every other part of her build. I should also specify that Pippinville isn't its own world. It's actually just a small piece of Alpha World, where the game starts you. This means that there are possibly more towns and areas to explore in just this one world. I didn't have time for more exploration, or I would have tried to explore the entirety of Alpha World. Let's just look at what Pippinville has to offer. The museum has links to many different builds, all created by Lady Pippin, as far as I'm aware. Some of them, like this Exploratorium, have music that plays when you enter it. Another batch of assets loaded, and I could see different locations that I could teleport to. Some had interesting significance, and others were just Lady Pippin's house. There was this art museum full of art from Lady Pippin and most likely others. Some of the art is done with paints and others with pencil. There's also this repeating sound of nature in the background that doesn't feel very comforting, and more like I'm trapped in this world as it repeats on a loop over and over again. That's kind of the overall vibe of the game. These worlds are full of things you might see in another video game, but they all lack life. They are more Uncanny Valley than Stardew Valley. It's all lacking definition or reason, more abstract art than anything else. I went back to Lady Pippin's museum and found this. Yeah, they have a memorial for 9/11 built into the server. Clicking on it, it's kind of a dystopian place. It's a real memorial to the events that transpired that day, but it all feels wrong somehow. There are images of the Twin Towers that day, as well as images of rescuers and volunteers. There are American flags everywhere, including a few at half-mast. There are quotes here as well, but I'm not sure from whom. I spent a little more time walking around the memorial before heading back to the museum. There was a Halloween area that I checked out next. Far from Halloween related, really. It was set in a dark box since the sky couldn't be modified. There's a tall gray building in the center, but it's mostly empty inside. The real attraction to this area is the graveyard in the back. Most of the gravestones appear to have funny phrases on them. Nothing too creepy, except for this guy. I found him hiding in the trees. I'm not sure what his deal is, but he surely jump scared me when I first saw him. No matter where I explored, his gaze never stopped following me. Possibly one of the darkest areas I went was this memorial area for real people. I think they might have been either friends of Lady Pippin or part of the community. Here you can see images of the users along with their days of passing. It's just so strange to see a full memorial in a game like this. There's also at least a dozen people listed here, which makes me wonder how so many of the users in this community have passed. I guess 28 years is a long time. Leaving that main memorial area, I came upon these labyrinths of memorials. Some of them took up more space than some of the houses I explored. There was another flag at half-mast for these individuals. I was ready to leave this area, but I wasn't quite done exploring the game yet. I ended up in this art museum with some eerie music in the background. I wasn't able to move for some reason, at least not faster than a crawl. This place was giving off the theater creepypasta vibes. I didn't stay long. I was teleported to a world based on Godzilla. With so much New York references, I figured it must have been based on the Godzilla 2000 movie, a movie which I loved as a child and haven't seen since. The world has this droning sound in the background. probably supposed to reference the sounds of Godzilla's footsteps. There's also carnage almost everywhere, with cars and fires littering the roads. A few helicopters can be seen and heard flying around the city. I never did find Godzilla, and I probably needed to do a second look, but the world itself felt creepy with the sounds and design of it all. I got what I needed from this server, especially with this sound that started playing when I approached the outskirts of the world's border. I got sent back to the other world of the art museum and was finally able to move around. I walked for a bit and found myself at a teleporter. When I went through it, I was back in the Godzilla world, only it was now a prison. I was trapped between these tall buildings and some fleshy looking shapes. They were pixelated and gross. There was nowhere for me to go as I was trapped. I left the server and soon found a place called Heaven's Stairway. The first thing I was jump scared with was an ad for Peloton. There's a jukebox here that plays some radio station, a radio station that only plays 80s music for some reason. The world has this funky vibe to it. The NPCs are all dancing and it appears to be celebrating the new year of 2023, so this server must have been updated at least at the start of this year. There were several interesting sights, but the most ominous was this spiral staircase in the center. I decided I needed to see where it took me. The climb took far longer than was necessary. It took a literal 5 minutes of walking with terrible controls in a circle to reach the top, which is kind of what I was expecting. It's a religious area, with quotes from the Bible and YouTube videos of readings to be watched. The area was strangely ominous, but I didn't stick around to see what else it was hiding. I went to a few other worlds with interesting locations and motifs, but nothing of major interest. There were 2 X-Files based worlds. There was a world based off Lord of the Rings, which was made by Lady Pippin, which just clicked in my head when I found it. All this is fine and slightly eerie, but only one world has something that felt raw and wrong. There's a world called Jesus' God TV. Let me just play the intro when you enter the world.
Welcome to Jesus' God TV.
Yeah, this feels like the place I should be. The world is draped in this red silk background but looks almost like blood with how flat it is. The first thing to mention is that there were people here. A few people that I met while exploring, and the man that ran the world. A man by the name of Saintly Mick. Saintly Mick welcomed us to his world and told us to explore. It felt like some kind of biblical torture room full of ads and verses every which way you turned. There were gifts, 3D objects that resembled angel wings, and a fire over Saintly Mick's head. I was stunned but intrigued. Even more so by the man behind this all, who had a YouTube channel as well as a website. He claimed to have been interested in 3D since 1999, and that led him to this creation. I wandered for a bit before talking to the man behind this world. I asked about the end times that he claimed we were in, and he said that he had proof of it. It was in the Fellowship Hall, my next destination. There was this cathedral-like stone archway that led to the Fellowship Hall. Once I entered, I realized that I was certainly in for something. The walls were covered in crosses and mentions of Jesus everywhere. There were some generally interesting finds, but most of it was more of the same. I also wasn't able to find any proof relating directly to the end times, just several mentions of tribulations and the horns that will end the world. There's also a lot of mentions of going to hell for different reasons. Oh, and a mention of COVID being the beginning of the end times. So I guess there was something here about them. Not that it proves anything. That's when I decided to check out the other floors, which all had varying levels of weirdness to them. The second floor was almost like a dance party. It was very odd. The third floor had a pool and a bunch of other clickable signs, one that took me to a maze that I definitely didn't finish going through. That was my experience with active worlds. There seems to be something here, something that keeps bringing people back to create and socialize. Even though there was like a max of 13 people on when I was exploring. Most of the worlds were complete ghost towns with monuments built by those that had once been there. It was all unintentionally creepy, like I was exploring the remnants of a dead world. One that didn't really serve a purpose. Well, not anymore. Yet it still had visitors. It still has worlds. It still has a very, very small but engaged community. If you're looking for a truly liminal experience, try out Active Worlds. I can't guarantee you'll have a good time, but you'll definitely have an experience. Le Poulet Gauche is a page dedicated to the Middle Ages and Renaissance and to role-playing from those eras. Le PG originally grew from a series of emails discussing Society for Creative Anachronism, events where people could interact in character. They then created a tavern that opens at such events in which they hoped one would feel as though they time-traveled upon entry. The webpage lists their tavern employees and their backstories. They even have a section on developing a persona for the SCA events, under Our Last Event. The tavern's latest menu, a program of activities, how to play, alcohol, etc. are listed. A patron could even email Jean-Marie for special orders. Aside from information about the now-defunct tavern, the website has many links about the history, politics, society, and culture of 16th century France. The information is incredibly in-depth. Each link offers paragraphs upon paragraphs about the given subjects and is neatly organized for easy finding. There's a lot of information, and if you enjoy history, it's definitely worth a look. Towards the end of the webpage, an About the Authors link is present. There appear to be 4 authors for lepg.org. Alex Newman, the furniture maker and performance developer, John Maurice, a registered nurse who enjoys cooking, Jehan Dulac, who prefers to use an alias, and CT Iannuzo, a hardcore history fan who also maintains the website. A link to a bibliography is present, but doesn't work. Unfortunately, the website was last updated on January 1st, 2004. Hopefully one day they'll be able to open their tavern again. Theosophy.com is a website that hasn't been updated since 2004. It's a website dedicated to the New Age religion known as Theosophy. It is a religion that started in the US in the late 19th century. The religion was started by a woman named Helena Blavatsky and was a mashup of religious ideologies with some occultism thrown in. The website serves as a starting point for anyone interested in learning about important figures in the religion and important events. It holds the symbol for Theosophy in the background and at the top of the site. It's pretty bare as far as websites go, but there are a few things to look at. Firstly, you have the key Theosophites listed with an image of the member attached. There's a mailing list that went down in 2010, along with the newsletter you could sign up for. The final section is the most interesting. This section has a series of videos that you can watch about Theosophy. There are conferences where they discuss religion, what it means, and how it's supposed to affect the world. They have some interesting ideas and follow principles established in other religions. Aside from those videos, there's not much more to the site. There's no members list or anything like that. It's just a site for a religion that never quite caught on. The New Mexico Resonance was a nonprofit research corporation that used magnetic resonance to study fluids, their environments, and their emotions. The flows of not only liquids but of glass and solid particles, as well as their mixtures, were studied. The corporation relied on US government funding and collaborated heavily with the University of New Mexico. There's a list of the scientists' major scientific achievements, as well as their ongoing work. The webpage is pretty bare besides their ongoing work. There are a few photos of particles, some graphs, and a broken link to MRE images of granular materials. The rest of the links list publications, personnel, students, visitors, and a guest book. There's also a page with different links, some of which are broken. The last link brings us to a photo gallery with only 4 photo albums that feature not many photos. The photos do lead to a small peek into the scientist's life in the early 2000s, though. The webpage was last updated in April of 2008. The nonprofit corporation seems to still be open, but its website has been neglected. Worlds Chat was released to the public in 1995 by Worlds Inc. Later in 1997, it would be acquired by Worlds Acquisition Corporation and have its name changed to the one you've likely heard it go by, Worlds.com. Worlds.com was the first ever 3D virtual chat room. It was a pioneer for many of the others that would follow, including Active Worlds. It had avatars that you could control, had chat rooms where you could talk to others, and even included whole worlds to explore. Worlds.com has gained a bit of a reputation online in recent years. This mainly stems from a rumor that there's a real cult that exists within the servers of the game. It was covered by many a YouTuber, a few blogs, and even a few news sites. It's something that I'll get into later, but for now let's take a look at the history of Worlds.com. Worlds.com went into beta in 1994, still going by Worlds Chat at the time, and has everyone inhabiting a space station where they are free to explore and interact with others. The space station was created by Jeff Robinson, while the avatars and promotional photography were created by Helen Chow. Together they made the original look of Worlds.com. When the game was ready to come out of beta, the team behind the virtual chat room did something interesting. In 1996, the game was scheduled to come out of beta, and a patch changed the design of the space station. It was made to look like an end-of-the-world party had taken place. Many of the avatars had the end painted in red on their chests, while the phrase "It's over" was painted on the walls. There was even a global chat message announcing the impending doom. The space station was approaching a red planet, which it eventually would crash into. This event then led to the release of the full game, Worlds Chat 1.0 demo version and gold version. The demo version wouldn't let you leave the space station and only allowed you to use a small selection of avatars. The gold version, which you had to pay $32.95 USD for back in 1996, gave you access to everything. There's more to the history of the game, but I think we can cover that later. Let's take a look at what the virtual chat room is like, as it's still online today. Worlds.com can be downloaded directly from their website, which looks like it hasn't been visually updated since the 90s. That's because two versions of their site exist. There's a clean modern site and the original 90s version. Both are still up, but it's harder to find the latter. You have the download, which is pretty small, a screenshot of the world, and some avatars you could choose from. These include a real person, penguin, monster, kangaroo, or a clown. Below that you'll find screenshots of some of the worlds that we'll be exploring today. These are some of the most interesting worlds and created directly by the company behind the game, as well as featured partners. I would like to also mention that I won't be exploring user-generated worlds just yet. Maybe in a follow-up video, as there are hundreds of unique worlds to explore, some that require you to download assets not found in the game. At the bottom of the page is a section about the basic features of the chat room. This includes avatars, text chat and mute, discussion groups, music, and more. These are all necessities for virtual chat rooms really, but since this is the original, it would make sense that they would all be included here. Once the game is downloaded and an account has been made, you'll be sent to the first area of the game. This is the space station, which has now landed in a desert. It's known as GZ or Ground Zero, a starting point for every player's exploration. The first thing you'll likely notice is the textures of the world. This is considered 3D, but only barely. The avatars mostly look like 2D models that imitate 3D. The penguin is what you'll be started out as, but the avatar gallery is right there. There are also fully 3D models, but you have to switch to one of those avatars in the gallery. The avatar gallery allows you to swap out your avatar, as well as customize any that you select. The customization is something I didn't really get the chance to mess around with too much. I ruined the first character I was playing as, and decided to swap to another. I picked the punk avatar and was off to explore whatever this game had to offer. The first thing that I need to mention is how this game works, with exploring and downloading new areas. In order for you to explore an area, you have to download its assets. To do that, you must go to the area. Once there, you'll be prompted to download the assets to access it, then it restarts your game. You have to do this for every single area in the game, which takes forever, so as a recommendation, you should visit every area that needs a download. Download it, and then keep playing until you've accumulated every download. Then restart and watch them all update your game. This will save you some time in the long run. The first area I went to explore was World Center. This is supposed to be a hub where communities can meet up, and it's part of Ground Zero. It's presented as the space station from before, complete with sliding doors and mechanized sounds to match. They have sports, movies, music, and the news as hubs you can explore and chat with others. Though most of the time you'll be exploring by yourself, as I didn't run into a single person on my exploration. Continuing down this train of thought, it's eerie how empty everything is. This is supposed to be a chat service where you can and are supposed to interact with others. With no one here, it all felt kind of liminal. Like people could be moving around these empty halls and talking to each other, but instead it's just me. Every room where you could expect to find something was just a blank space with a poster or sign telling you what the room is used for. I went to every room and only the newsroom had something written on the wall. I thought maybe it could actually be current news, but it didn't seem that way. The comedy, drama, and music video rooms were all empty too. Each one had its own wallpaper and floor tiles, but nothing of substance really. Next I checked out the sadness and glee pods. These were some of the original chat rooms when worlds.com was still in beta. I chose to teleport there, but it's important to note that you can actually just walk anywhere on this world. Everything is supposed to be connected. I walked through this weird smiley face door and was in the Glee pod. Stopping at the sign, I thought there were several rooms to hang out in. These included Sunshine, Chills, Thrills, Rave, and Googie. For some reason, the doors to these rooms were wooden doors that didn't match the spaceship design. There's also really creepy smiley faces that litter the walls and floors. Definitely remnants of the old internet. As I explored the rooms, which all looked strange, I was accosted by this song that was playing in loop in the background. When I entered a different room, the song would change to match it, or match it as best it could. Some of the songs matched their rooms better than others. The low quality of the sound bites really threw me off. It was even worse with the lack of sound for everything else. No footsteps or other sound effects, and just music made it all a little uncanny, especially the Chills room that had a giant mirror and childlike drawings of leaves all over the walls. Another important thing to note here is that the world would stop for a few seconds as you load into a new area. Sometimes it takes only a second, and sometimes you are sitting for a minute or two. This seems to happen more often when the world is loading a new song or sound effect to loop. It seems to care less about what is actually occupying the world, though. The next stop was the Garden Pod, which is a teleporter on the spaceship. The sounds of space and some light drumming can be heard as I make my way towards the portal. Once inside, there's a sudden shift to this soft piano and the sounds of the woods. It's actually kind of nice. Well, at least at first. The more I explored the garden, the more surreal everything got. There were the sounds of birds and nature, but all I could see were blurry backgrounds and 2D images that created narrow paths to walk down. It was like existing in someone's rendition of the classic internet, where everything was representational but not actual. I got to the night side of the gardens as the audio changed to represent a more somber time. The piano had a droning sound accompanying it, and crickets could be heard. This was supposed to be a dark area, but the sun appeared to still be up. The garden was supposed to be peaceful, but something about its design and lack of life made it more eerie. I wanted to keep exploring the area, but it kept making me load the worlds as I explored every few steps, which was getting annoying. So I checked out a few of the houses along the way back and noted nothing substantial inside. I'm not even sure what these houses were used for, as they seemed so secluded from the rest of the garden area. I suppose they were actually chat room areas in the game, but they feel so separate from the actual experience of the garden. The next area is one that I was worried about. The music pod, which could have loads of copyrighted music in it, which would make it a chore to explore, as I think having the sounds of the game really submerges you all in this world with me. Regardless, I made my way there. Upon entering, you are greeted by this NPC that uses a very awkward sounding voice clip to invite you in. I'll just play it here.
Hi, welcome to Hang. Step right through these doors to see what's happening today in the music scene.
Hang was the name for the areas where people were expected to hang out. The music in that area before you enter is kind of somber, and I actually enjoyed it a bit. It was simple but really made the whole experience feel like I was actually doing some urban exploring. Inside the main lounge were two different doors leading to different genres of music. Classic rock, metal, country, hip-hop, and so on. I decided to check out the alternative room first. Another NPC invited me in, and it was pretty underwhelming. Just a blinking image in the background with some band logos on it. Next was the classic rock room, which had more blinking artist names and this weird dude that waved me in. Country was my next stop. As expected, you walk through barn doors to enter the room. It's a ranch-style area, and what's that on the ground? The music has stopped in the room, where it hadn't in the others. That looks like a dead body. I can't interact with the gate to open it and see, but he isn't moving at all. Why did the music stop in this room only? This NPC over here waves at me as if she isn't standing near a dead body. Is he dead? I know this game has Easter eggs hidden in some of the worlds, but a dead body in the field of a country music hangout? I'm not sure, and I can't find anyone online talking about this either. For now, I'll leave this area. I'll come back once I find answers. Next up is the metal hangout, and I'll just show you what this one has to offer. Firstly, you see the fire at the other end of a weirdly shaped door. Once in the hall, you'll be greeted by this Grim Reaper jester, along with skulls and a pentagram on the ceiling. If you walk through the fire, you'll end up in what I can only describe as hell. It's 4 walls with fire on each side. Again, there's no music here. Just the imagery of fire and brimstone. Honestly, very metal. As you leave the area, you get this really cool image of the place. There's an animated skull staring you down as you make your way towards the door. This image is one that I often think of when trying to encapsulate my feelings for this game. Eerie, creepy maybe, but never downright scary. This image invokes a bit of that. I'll make my way through for now. There's not much more to talk about here really, except for maybe the hip-hop room. On the other side of this hub, you'll find the hip-hop hangout. Once inside, you're greeted with this grainy image of the Twin Towers. This is the second one of these virtual worlds that I've explored that had imagery of the towers, though this one doesn't appear to be a memorial. They're just set up to be the background image for the hub, truly showing how this is a time capsule of a game. The Funland world was next, and it was pretty lackluster honestly. All that I could find was this little path to 3D balloons that float up into the air. This music is playing on loop the entire time as well. Also explored the other hangouts, specifically for couples. They had one for marriage, teens, newly single, and a birthday room, complete with Pin-the-Tail on the donkey, and these creepy clowns, both of which were blinking far too much. The final spot on the space station that I checked out was this odd room that seemed like it might be for piloting the ship. I wasn't able to proceed past because there's a force field created by these floating things in the sky. This noise started that wouldn't stop until I completely reset my game, which I also couldn't normally close out of, forcing me to end the process. I decided I was done with the main hub and wanted to see some of the worlds that had been created for us to explore. There was one that I saw recommended a lot, and that was the Animal House world. The world was part of a collaboration between Worlds Inc., Universal, and Hyundai. It was based off of the 1978 film of the same name and was designed as a hangout spot for college students. The actual area is probably one of the creepier in the game. When you load in, you're placed in the front yard but not by the entrance for some reason. Instead you are placed at an angle from the house, almost like you just hopped the fence for some reason, maybe trying to break in, or maybe running from something. The music in the front yard is the similar tune that we've heard a few times, but if you make your way to the backyard, it changes. It's all of a sudden a creepier tune. I'll let the music play for a bit to really let it settle in. There's a trend that's really popular right now in the indie horror scene, the PS1 style horror game. Essentially, a game will take inspiration from an 80s or 90s property and use PS1 style graphics and gameplay. This trend has been done many times by Puppet Combo, who make great games. This song, this town, this house, all of this together really makes it feel like being trapped in a pixelated 80s slasher film. Everything about this screams horror game. The light in the window flicking off and on, the music having that subtle drone in the background, and even the pace of the song. Nothing works more, though, than the actual graphics of the environment. It's also blocky and digitized, but real in a way. Let's actually go inside the house. Once inside, it's a different vibe entirely. This is more of a party place. There's a bar, a TV that is playing some flashing images, which feels like it came straight from an analog horror ARG, and there are beer bottles everywhere. The world here still screams horror to me, but it's a little more subtle. The entire upstairs has inaccessible doors, except for the one that leads to the attic. There's nothing of note in the attic, but I do want to mention the lack of music that plays when you are exploring upstairs. The game goes deathly silent, which only lasts until you go back downstairs. There's also a basement, which we saw for a second earlier. Going down into the basement gives you a unique song. This one sounds like an 80s slasher theme, and it only plays in this part of the basement. The song that plays in the backyard sounds similar, but they are each unique. There's actually more to this basement. If you go around this corner, then you'll be met with this. There are these dark hallways made of mud and a fleshy looking substance. It's hard to accurately describe the walls. They could be rock, or they could be the bodies of those that were killed here and used to line the walls. The texture looks more red than I expect dirt to be. There's a new song that plays here as well. And if the horror aesthetic of this world wasn't already settling in, this should seal it. Everything about this area is purposefully supposed to unsettle you. The eerie music, the maze of flesh, colored cave walls, and the lack of knowing where you are. These walls are a maze that you'll have to find your way out of. There are multiple exits that you are supposed to find while exploring the caves. The first one I found was this giant open cavern. It was this gaping maw that definitely couldn't fit under this house. It was reminiscent of the book House of Leaves, where a large structure existed inside the confines of a house that couldn't hold it. Yet, here it was. I could also compare it to the back rooms, but I feel that comparison could be made for the entirety of the game. I kind of stared in awe of the place. I felt so out of place in the overall world of Animal House. Was this supposed to be a secret horror meetup place, or perhaps was later turned into this by some updates? Between this area and an official map and the dead body that I saw in the country area, there was definitely more going on than meets the eye. Regardless, I left the room and found myself in the area that you're supposed to find. A giant underground club, which was actually considered its own map on the universe map. The club was of course empty and playing music that was way too loud. The emptiness of the club was similar to how I felt exploring the music rooms. It was an eerily vacant space that will continue to be one until the end of this server's lifespan. Empty and devoid of life is the best way to describe it. I found myself back in the caves after I entered the bathrooms. They had stairs that led back down into the depths. The only difference was, these appeared to be new parts of the caves. Here I found these strange rooms. I entered, and it was purely blue. There appeared to be no real reason for its existence. It was somehow more alien than the space station where I started my exploration. Leaving the blue room leads to a red room. It feels similar to the red room of Edgar Allan Poe's A Mask of Red Death. In that story, the red room represented death, but here, it feels ominous for a different reason. Though I'm not sure it served any real purpose, similar to the blue room. Entering the room showed that there was no exit, or it should just lead back to the blue room. But when I turned around, the blue room was gone, and instead it was the caves again. Following this was the only jump scare this game ever gave me. As I was walking looking for the exit, I saw someone walk by me going down an opposite hall. I jumped because at this point, I hadn't seen a single other person exploring worlds.com. It was just me, on this lonesome look through a digital ghost town. I quickly realized that it was my character model. Was it a purposeful jump scare that was supposed to make you feel like you weren't actually alone? I couldn't tell, as a copy of me was always moving just before I could catch up to him. I made my way back to the club and found an unmarked door on the second floor. Going through it brought me to an unsuspected place. I was in the hallway of a school, complete with lockers and drinking fountains. This area also had a classroom you could walk into and around, and a unique song. Continuing my exploration brought me to a little town area. This all ended with a storefront for a band called Hanson. It was their superstore, but I'm not sure why it was hidden like this, or what the point of the school even was. Before we move on from this world, I wanted to explore outside of the yard, so I found a way to delete part of the wall and I was free to explore. The streets were empty and there's really only one point of interest out here, which is the street light. I continued walking towards the end of the road when this happened. I may have found out what we were supposed to be running from all along. I was attacked by this strange eyeball monster and then teleported to a new part of the map. I walked out of the door and found myself in the attic. When I turned around, the other door was gone. I was just back in the house again. It was a surreal moment in a game that seemed to be filled with them. The exploration of Animal House turned out to be a different experience than I was expecting. The casual hangout spot for college kids had some dark secrets, eerie music, and an atmosphere that would be more at home in a horror movie than a virtual chat room. That's kind of been my entire experience with the game. Aside from a few rumors, I didn't really know much about this game. Which I suppose it's time to address an elephant in the room. One that plagues the servers of worlds.com. A rumor that needs a bit of further investigating, that being the supposed cult that resides within the walls of worlds.com. This cult has been covered by many YouTubers before me. With that said, you can't just explore the game and not discuss one of its most intriguing aspects. I'll be quoting and referencing several sources for this section, and those can be found on screen and in the description of this video. The cult of worlds.com was first reported back in 2012. Two names are common in this rumor, those being Gimbly and Nexialist. The two are related in only the game of worlds.com. They don't overlap beyond that. Starting with Nexialist, He was first mentioned on 4chan around 2012. Unfortunately, the links I pulled from ForgottenWorlds.com, the blog I'm pulling most of this info from, don't work anymore. I can't find any other links or sources either. I was able to find a screenshot that was shown in Nexpo's video on the subject, but I couldn't verify those myself. The posts were from 2013, but the ForgottenWorlds.com blog was from 2012. Nexialis was described as a player that had been around since possibly the late 90s and was a regular on the game. He would approach new players and ask them to follow him. Doing so, he would show them around Worlds.com without really talking. He would then show them the more dark and creepy side of the game, usually specifically showing them his world, which had satanic imagery. This all kind of sounds like a creepypasta or urban legend. A person approaches you in a supposedly abandoned game and asks you to follow him. His avatar is this creepy horse thing which almost looks like a person wearing a hood and mask. This helps with the cult-like image that players and others have bestowed upon him. But that's just the thing. He isn't a cult leader. Not really. Nexialis is a regular in the game. He's using this cult persona to try and bring more people to the game. He specifically was targeting 4chan as a place to bring in new players. Overall, it just sounds like he's a person who wants others to see the creations that he's made and enjoy the game that he does. No harm, no foul, really. Gimli, on the other hand, is a bit of a different story. There's a small mention to him on the ForgottenWorlds.com blog. This is a place where you'll get most of the information about this guy, as no one else has dug too deep into who he is or what his goal might be. Gimli had a private network that only those within his inner circle could enter. To do this, he required a picture from you. This seemed weird, but it got weirder. There was a room called the Porn Room that was filled with supposed real images of users that had submitted themselves. There were some of men, but it was mostly of women. Whether these were real people or not, I couldn't know for sure since I wasn't able to see the room myself. According to the blog, there was a room with a user's name that stood out. The other rooms all contained a few or even a single image of a person, so they were labeled with just their room number. One user had their name next to the number, Kellycat. This user had a bunch of pictures of her all over the walls, making it seem like someone was stalking her. The images were varied, but a lot of them were indecent. Gimli had an inner circle, walls filled with images of his followers, and a secret room with indecent images of users. Yeah, he seems like the cult leader here. He's not specifically a cult leader, but of the two, he has more of the traits. No, there really isn't a cult in Worlds.com. No matter how many times this rumor spreads across the internet, it's probably one of the more interesting rumors. It's something that clearly has brought people to the game so they can explore for themselves. I knew that Worlds.com was supposed to be the original virtual 3D chat room, which is true. What I didn't expect was the dark, lonely, and oftentimes creepy atmosphere of the game. Even the Easter eggs hidden within each of the official worlds mostly focused on horror-related finds. These Easter eggs, which have no direct answer online, are probably some of the creepiest because of it. They're the exact kind of things I'm looking for on these internet expeditions. Finding a dark side hidden beneath the surface is exactly what I wanted to do when I started this series. Even so, there's still more to see of Worlds.com, but I'll save that for later. I still have some websites that we need to explore. Goodbye for now, Worlds.com. I will find all of your secrets eventually. Urban Twilight is an interesting site that I stumbled upon many years ago. Sadly, the website is gone from the internet, mostly, but you can still access parts of it from the Wayback Machine. This website asks the question of what is out there around us in urban society. A group of site members decided to answer that question by taking pictures of urban areas all over the world. This is an urban exploration website that focuses on taking pictures of the most unique places, areas that we pass over without a second thought. There are images of abandoned buildings, but most of these come from places that you wouldn't think to take pictures of. Tunnels going underground, abandoned railroad cars, the tops of old factories. They explore it all and capture it in images shared to the site. Some of these photos are artistic, some are pragmatic, but all are worth looking at. This is a kind of photography that I haven't seen much of. The website began its life back in 2006 and left its final update to the site in 2020. They claim they had more images to drop, but I don't see anything listed for 2020. It's a shame this site went down, but at least the Wayback Machine has kept some of it alive. You can still see all of their photos for now. There are some really cool shots of the world we live in. I especially like the After Dark section. It truly captures the dark underbelly of society. Shiver V4 is a personal blog created sometime around the early 2000s. The blog focuses on a 16-year-old who wants to share a bit of his personal life. The blog is very bare bones, but contains some interesting aspects of being a teenager in the early 2000s. There aren't too many updates to read through, and most of them just talk about life at school and building a gaming room with pool tables. There's a lot here about this person's personal life. I'm not sure how relevant this is now, though. If they were 16 in 2003, then they are 38 now. I hope they're doing well. There are a few links you can click on at the top of the page: blog, bio, pals, pics, poems, art, and other links. You can look through the images or read the poetry if you'd like. The art has some interesting pieces to look at as well. Nothing too graphic, which is strange for the abandoned side of the internet. I'm so used to stumbling upon strange and obscure art pieces through these searches. All in all, not a whole lot more to see. Just a nice slice of the past is available for us all to visit. Landing on the Web 2 Zone homepage is extremely bleak, and clicking on their links leads to even less. Web 2 Zone was an internet cafe that defined itself as a cyber center that specializes in everything internet, such as console and computer video gaming, internet access, and business services. Their What is Web 2 Zone and Why to Use It links are broken. Clicking on the play link leads to an event that was hosted at Web 2 Zone. This event was a Guinness Book of World Records Guitar Hero 3 event that was happening on March 11, 2008. This event was free to attend, and one could watch Chris Chike, aka I Am Chris for Life, try to establish the world record for a single-player high score. Spoiler, he won. The last two links are Surf and Work. Both of these links list the rates for using Web 2 Zone's internet. They had morning, night, and student specials, as well as prepaid specials for members and non-members. The work section is a bit more straightforward, offering prepaid specials for all day and their rates. Under the business zone, they even advertise using their internet to update your resume or burn some CDs. There's a tech shop link that offers Windows OS installation, virus removal, data backup, and general troubleshooting and PC services. The party rental and the advertise with us links are just packages with prices listed. The party rental page offers a deluxe package that includes pizza and soda, ice cream, a personal game coordinator, and digital photos on a CDR. They also offer corporate events. Having a birthday here would have been amazing. The gallery one does work, but you cannot look through the photos. Unfortunately, they just end up being 404 pages. It would have been interesting to see the patrons of early 2000s internet cafes. The website seems to have been last updated in 2008, and the internet became more widely available. Thus, it makes sense that the business slowly closed. Thankfully, we can still view their website and look into what paying for internet in 2008 and earlier looked like. Drive Me Insane is a website that is exactly what it states. It's a website where individual users can come in and interact with the webcam. They could turn off the lights or mess with items in the room. This is all done for the enjoyment of both the creator of the site and the visitors to it. It all started with a single lamp that you could turn off or on over the internet, which at the time was never even thought of. It quickly cascaded into more and more stuff that you could do on the site, but the most entertaining was controlling a remote control car, which was very hard to do according to the site's creator. The whole story why the site exists and its influences can be found here. There's also a whole slew of images from 2 weddings. One was from the site's creator. The site seems to exist merely as a piece of history holding old articles and important memories alike. UFO Watchdog is an old website focused entirely on UFO sightings and archiving discussions made by professionals. This looks like a great place to start your search into the realm of UFOlogy. There are loads of links here to all things UFO. The website started life back in '97 and was updated until 2009. My favorite parts of the website are the Hall of Fame and the Hall of Shame. These are essentially areas where you can see UFO experts' opinions and proof. The Hall of Shame is all about those who have presented clearly fake evidence to try and gain some kind of fame from it all. Going through these sections, you can find articles and bios on Peter Davenport, Richard Dolan, Russ Esters, and many more. These are the people to follow for your UFOlogy needs. Each page is complete with an image of the person and what they've added to the community and the conversation. On the other side, the Hall of Shame. Here you'll find those looking to exploit the UFOlogy community for their own gain. It's interesting to see that there are a lot more pages here to go through. Most of these are talking about debunked files or faked evidence that was pushed by a person or persons. Here you'll see a lot of UFO and other high strangeness content being debunked. The site's creator clearly cares a lot about UFOs and wants to keep misinformation at a minimum, likely because it takes away from the studies being done by others. It also paints the entire study as a farce. I enjoyed reading through the individual pages of the Hall of Shame a lot. There's nothing quite like seeing someone get put on blast for defrauding people. Sarah's webpage is another personal blog run by a girl named Sarah. This is about what you'd expect from a blog of this nature. There are photos of college life, friends and family, and a few trips that Sarah took abroad. She visited both Australia and New Zealand. The website is barer than the others we've seen so far. You can look through the few links of pictures, but there's not much to see here. I can't find the year this was created, but it looks to be in the mid-2000s. The useless links section has a link for Napster, so I don't imagine it being more new than 2004. Since there's not much to see, let's move on. Netanimations.net is an extremely busy webpage that specializes in moving clip art and GIFs. Scrolling through this webpage induces a huge amount of nostalgia. The obnoxious colors and cluttered designs really bring me back. There isn't an About Me page, but there are a few pages dedicated to animators, such as Acorns Animations and Elvis Weathercock. Acorns Animations still creates GIFs and moving clip art to this day on their website, 3danimatedgifs.com. This artist is dedicated to creating free stuff, which is pretty awesome. There are GIF topics ranging from apes to zombies, so there's something for everyone. When clicking on a topic, there's also a box offering related pages for ease of search. The majority of these GIFs are as nostalgic as the webpage itself, specifically the cat's GIF section. Not only are there GIFs and clip art, but there's also videos embedded in the website related to the topic as well as music and sound effects. On the cat page, you can listen to cats purring and cat-related songs. Overall, this page is pretty wholesome and an interesting trip down memory lane. Welcome to Horror Stop, a personal blog all about horror movies. This is a website not easily found, but I was glad I did. The site was started in 2005 and lasted until late 2006. It's a real shame because this kind of content would have been great to read through back in that time. There are 6 main links to click on from this homepage. First, you have a film library, which is where you'll find reviews for all the horror movies the site creator owns. Some of the links don't take you anywhere, but others lead to film reviews. The first one I read was about the Amityville Horror remake from 2005. This is the one with Ryan Reynolds in it. I enjoyed the movie and it appears so did they. The layout for the movie reviews is actually something I commend them for. Having the white text against the black background with red bordering images and other points of interest is great. The pieces they've written for each film are also well thought out and interesting. I feel like this person and I would get along great since we both seem to have similar opinions on a lot of these films. The other links on the main webpage include a section dedicated to the masters of horror, writers, directors, and actors, and other crew for horror films. An FAQ section, site updates, horror links that mostly don't work, and their top 10 horror films. Let's take a look at these the correct way. Number 10 is A Nightmare on Elm Street. 9 is Carrie. 8 is Suspiria. 7 is Black Christmas. 6 is Friday the 13th. 5 is The Exorcist. 4 is The Shining. 3 is Psycho. 2 is Halloween. And number 1 is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This list seems to include all of the gory 70s and 80s classics. A lot of these don't quite hold up today and are more gory and silly, but fun movies rather than scary. I wouldn't knock anyone for enjoying them. I still watch a few of these during Halloween time to really get into the spirits of the holiday. The Horror Stop is a cool website that saw a short time frame for support before becoming a piece of internet history. I'd gladly say you should all check out the site, as there's some cool content here beyond what I showed. If you ever need a complete walkthrough of GTA Vice City, you can go onto a website like IGN or GameFAQs, or you can go to Vice City GTA Guide. This is a website from 2003 that takes you through the entire game of GTA Vice City. And make sure you get to the end of the game with it completed fully. The site is colored to match Vice City with a blue background and purple outline on everything. This website seems to be pretty thorough, but I wouldn't know since I haven't played Vice City in a long time. I vaguely remember some of these quests and character names though. Everything you could want is available here. Missions, side quests, property missions, even an Easter egg to find. You could probably complete the entire game just using this as an aid, but you could probably complete the game without it too. Still a cool relic of the old internet. GhostTowns.com is a very interesting website centered around ghost towns in the USA and Canada. The first notable issue with this website is its layout and how most of the links just simply do not work. After clicking on a few of the links, the website tries to get you to download a VLC file. It's frustrating that a website that probably has a lot of cool information on it simply does not work anymore. What does work is the map link for finding ghost towns in your state or province. Upon clicking a state or province, and then a county for the US, you are greeted by a list of ghost towns in that area. Each ghost town lists its name, county, roads, grid, climate, and the best time to visit. There's a description of the ghost town, a comment section, what remains, and even some photos, if we're lucky. Unfortunately, a few photos are distorted. Ghost Town books give us links to books relating to ghost towns in whatever location of your choosing. These are also listed when you click on the map link. Visiting ghost towns also still works and lands on a page describing what a ghost town is, and extra links on how to locate a ghost town, how to read maps, and things to bring with you. Sadly, the Play the Ghost Towns game link and the Ghost Towns TV link both are broken. Jerome's Notebook is an interesting addition to the website. This online journal began in December of 1999 and ended in November of 2002. These entries describe Jerome and his best friend's adventures through ghost towns and other trips they took together. Some of the photos made it through time, but others are lost. Regardless, these journals are a great glimpse into someone's life. The last working link is the monthly feature link. The last monthly feature was Wolf Hole, located in Mojave County in Arizona. There's a small description of Wolf Hole stating that it appears to have been a small ranching and farming community. Its name was given to it by Mayor John Wesley Powell, who mistranslated the Puwata name, Coyote Spring, as Wolf Hole. Only one house remains and a few foundations. It would have been great if the links to awards, virtual museum, gift shop, and guided tours worked, but they are broken and lost to time. Luckily, the map and a few of the links on the side of the website still work. If anything, the map with all the data on ghost towns in Jerome's notebook are the most important in terms of preserving history. Pointer.com is a strange website, to say the least. Upon entering the website, you're greeted by a black screen asking you to please move your pointer, and then a loading screen saying that it is finding your pointer and to please hold still. The website then loads pictures of seemingly random people pointing their fingers at random objects or other people. These photos are definitely from the early 2000s, which leads the website to be an interesting time capsule. Otherwise, the point of such a website is a little lost. Hopefully, whoever created this website knew all these people and didn't just grab random photos of strangers to compile them here. Here are a few examples of the website pointing at the pointer. The Chupacabra homepage is one of the oldest websites on the internet. Started in 1995 by Tito Armstrong 96, a student at Princeton University. The website focuses on the Chupacabra, a local cryptid for Puerto Rico. At least as far as the site is concerned. The website has an artist's rendition of the creature at the top and alien faces in black and white surrounded the site. There is a reason for that we'll get to later. The first link we'll check out is Who or What is the Chupacabra? It opens to a new page and starts telling us what this creature is. The Chupacabra is a blood-sucking vampire-like creature that sucks blood from mainly farm animals. This comes from reports of farmers finding their livestock dead with all of the blood taken out from their bodies. The name comes from the original reports of the creature, where it attacked mainly goats. It was known as the goat sucker. The chupacabra is described as a panther-like creature with red eyes and a long snake-like tongue. This would put it clearly into the cryptid section, but Tito has his own ideas about the creature. His theory revolves around alien connection, thus the alien faces on the webpage, though he compares it to an alien's pet that got loose. Next comes a timeline created by Tito where he talks about the earliest sightings up to the most recent, though his most recent is in 1996. The first was sometime in the 1970s in southern Texas along the Mexican border, though it was an attack with the blood being removed from cattle and not an explicit sighting of the chupacabra. There are quite a few more links to click through. Some contain information about local events or government reporting, while others are stories from people who have witnessed the creature firsthand. The next one I'll be taking a look at is the alien theory. This section focuses on origins, the powers, and the habits of the chupacabra. According to this page, they are considered above average intelligence, can become undetectable, and they can fly. The next section claims that the chupacabra lives underground in caves. They only need to drink mammal blood to sustain themselves. The rest of their habit remains a total mystery, as even their home dwellings are not fully known. The final section is about the origins of these creatures. Here it explains that they are the pets of aliens, or some offshoot, as he puts it. There's not really anything more beyond that. He believes they were left behind by aliens at some point during a visit to Earth. They have often been associated with vampires as well. That's about all I'm going to look at for this website, but there's a lot more for anyone who wants to read up on this stuff. A lot of the information is old, but it's still interesting nonetheless. Animation World magazine has a webpage that has not been updated since 1997. It's this garish yellow with a purple text. It's hard on the eyes but reflects the era well. A lot of sites seem to have this aesthetic and it might look better on an older monitor than any of the newer ones. This website has a list of articles that you can still check out. Most of them still work, but some do lead to dead sites. There are 2 articles about children's rights and UNICEF, and there's even a review for The Thief and the Cobbler. These articles are interesting and paint the important issues of the time, but most of the website is dedicated to animation projects. There are articles about how the animation process is evolving, and a few on the shorts that will be at the Oscars. The website is laid out just like a magazine. You can find all sorts of interesting articles to look through. Some are even complete with GIFs, animations, and stills from animated works. It's just a really cool piece of history that is forever preserved online. Nicodemus' Tower is a website dedicated to a man's interest in sci-fi and fantasy worlds. It hasn't been updated since the year 2000, and it sits the same as it appears in those days. There are a variety of links to follow on the left. These include fantasy and sci-fi, role-playing, poetry, and lyrics, links, and an About Me page. Clicking on sci-fi and fantasy leads to more links. Clicking again takes us to a bunch of fantasy-themed artwork. These feel so very much out of the 80s. There was this style to fantasy artworks at the time, and this is what that aesthetic is to the core. The artworks don't have the name of the creators attached to them sadly, nor do they list a source. The section on role-playing games gives resources for AD&D. There's a rulebook in here as well, but I didn't download it to take a look. The link for poetry and lyrics leads to just that. There are several to read through here. There's even a collection of short poems to read. The author of the site mentions they are writing a fantasy book. They have a map and a world name listed as Turamar. He claims he'll post excerpts from his book on the site and add sections for races, but those were never added. The final update was in 2000, and that was the last time anything was added to the site, it seems. Here's another website that falls somewhere between a personal website and a review site. Josh Karpf has a website dedicated to food reviews, drink reviews, and other miscellaneous articles. Most of what you'll find here is food-related content, though. The first link I followed was for Eggs Benedict. Now, I half expected just a review of the breakfast dish, but found much more than that. I was given this ugly yellow website, an explanation of what Eggs Benedict is, and then a review of a McDonald's food item. Apparently, McDonald's sold Eggs Benedict McMuffins in 2004. I had no clue. It's part of a cross-promotion with Disney's Atlantis. I was a fan of McDonald's when I was a kid, but I don't think I was around for this item. I kinda wish I got to try one though. I expect they weren't all that bad, but I could be very wrong. The page includes an image of the item and a review. That's not all. The site also contains the infamous, to those who know, Pork Martini website. This website comes up often in discussions about abandoned websites. This website is actually how I found the overall site, as it is simply one of the links. Now, I'm not much of a drinker, so I have no idea if pork martinis would be good or not. I couldn't find anything online about whether they are a regular drink or not. They seem so strange and gross. A piece of cooked meat is thrown into some alcohol. That just doesn't appeal to me. The images that accompany the site do not make it look appetizing in the slightest. I'm not sure if this article is satire or not. I couldn't find anyone online who has tried these drinks, so I'm just going to assume that it's not real or at least very niche. There are a few links to check out if you're so inclined, but I'm going to move on to the next website. Fugly.com is a strange website that is a product of its time. It's a college humor type website filled with memes, inside jokes, a weird rating system, and loads of internet artifacts. The website represents that mid-2000s funk that was all over the place. The Spike TV effect is what it's called now. The site appears to have started out as a personal site before expanding. The site has not received any updates since 2007. The image section is now broken, but it had images for events that were popular past 2007, so there was at least images being uploaded into the mid-2010s. The website had a section called Fugly or Not. Users would submit their images and get a rating. It was a very strange system that doesn't work anymore. You can't even look at archived images. I'm not sure how or when it was removed, as the website is barely holding together. I wasn't able to look through most of the media, with all of it kind of dying as I'm exploring the site. I was able to navigate the forums, but that was useless. There are new posts made regularly here, but they're all bots trying to scam users. It's crazy how many bot posts are made here actually. Makes you wonder if the dead internet theory is real. The website also offers games which don't work anymore because they were all Flash. The site doesn't seem to have a reason to still exist, but it does. I wonder who is running it. For archival purposes, it's an interesting look into the past, but beyond that, it kind of lacks purpose. Extreme Web looks exactly how you'd expect, flames and extremely busy. The function of this website appears to be a compilation of photos found all over the web. Photos on this website range from anime to zodiac signs. Unfortunately, like many of the websites, a lot of the links are broken or lead to blank pages. Almost all the photo links work except for the zodiac ones, which brings us to a 404 error. Extreme Web also has a link to chat, forums, credits, guestbook, and an overall link page. The chat, forum, guestbook, and link pages all end on a 404 page, or don't load due to Flash no longer being available. The credit link is just a simple line of text reading, "I'd like to thank my friend Demetrius, webmaster of Sacrow Forever, for helping me to set up this webpage," by Extreme Web. In this era, someone would just make a Pinterest board or Tumblr page to collect their favorite photos, but in the early 2000s, this was a Pinterest board of sorts. Although the website is pretty bare bones now, it's an interesting look into someone's photo collection. Earthwitchery.com is a website dedicated to fairies, their lore, types, and how to attract them to your garden. The webpage is simple yet packed with information. Pictures of fairies and fairy-related items are scattered on the pages as well. The lore of the fairies is the first paragraph seen on the landing page. It describes where fairies come from and the season of Beltane, in which fairies are most prominent. Beltane also has its own links that talks about the lore of the season and what to eat, do, and what incense and herbs to use during the season. Earthwitchery has a section on fairy types as well. There is a description box of types of fairies, where to find them, and what to do. Under that, a section on elemental fairies is displayed. The fairy type, direction, and element, and what to do is listed here. There's a lot of information on what kind of fairies there are and what they do, which could be very interesting. After learning what kind of fairies there are, you can now learn how to attract them by creating a fairy garden. Again, Beltane is mentioned as well as midsummer being the best times to contact the fairies. In order to get the fairies to trust you, you should create a fairy garden as well as make a basket of small treats for them. A short list of fairy favorite flowers are listed on the website as well to help you jumpstart your garden. earthwitchery.com is a very straightforward website, with the only external link being a page about Beltane. At the bottom of the website, there's a link to a fairy garden website that no longer exists. Overall, the website is simple and a great reference for fairy and mythology lovers alike. This is a website created for the film Mallrats. Mallrats is a movie by Kevin Smith of Clerks fame, but I haven't seen either film, so I can't really talk about them. What I can talk about is this website. The landing page is definitely of its era, a black background with a poster for the movie. Underneath that is some green text inviting you to the mall, the one the movie took place at. Even further below that is a message from Kevin Smith about the movie. Kevin: I think Mallrats is very funny. I'm on your side. It's a movie that's very dear to my heart, but it went right in the shitter. When you do a movie like Clerks, then a movie like Mallrats that goes right down in the shit can, everyone says, haha, wise ass. So rather than subject yourself to that, you steal their thunder by saying it first. There's this infamous moment where I was on stage giving an award away with Laura Dern, and I opened up by saying, I want to take this time to apologize for Mallrats. I don't know what I was thinking. It was said in a very tongue-in-cheek fashion. It was a joke, but some people thought it was serious. Roger Ebert, in his interview of Chasing Amy, said, he started out with a great movie called Clerks, then followed up with a movie that was so bad that he apologized for it. The movie was not received well upon release, though now the movie has been dubbed a cult classic and one that many people described as a hidden gem. I haven't seen it, like I said, so I have no opinion here. Below this paragraph, we can see a copyright date for the website, 1997 to 1998. This doesn't mean that the website was last updated during those dates, as we'll see one update in 1999. It does mean that most of the content we're going to see was copyrighted between those dates though. Let's enter the mall. Clicking on the link takes us to this page. There's a paper-like background behind everything, with another Mallrats logo on the top left. In the center is a row of links. Each of these links takes you to a different part of the website, but the most interesting ones are the mall and the pictures link. Let's start exploring the mall. We're brought to the Eden Prime Mall directory. Here there are two maps of the mall. The first shows us a few of the shops that we're likely to find. Well, they're more links to different behind-the-scenes stuff from the film, but they are supposed to represent stores. The second map is of the food court, which has more links to behind-the-scenes stuff. The first store is the movie Info Haus. Here we can get a backstory to the movie. It tells us where the film takes place, in Red Bank, New Jersey, but that it was actually shot in Eden Prime, Minnesota. There are other aspects of the film that were not put into the fully released film for reasons like it did poorly with test audiences, to it had to be cut for time reasons. These are kind of lost on me, but it's still fun to see behind the scenes work like this. Next is the gallery of images. This one is pretty easy to understand. It's just a gallery of some images from the film. A lot of these aren't anything special as far as images go, but they must hold sentimental value for the director. There's a certain vibe to these images, like I'm reliving a piece of someone else's memories. One of the more interesting images is of the quote, famous hot tub pic. I'm not sure what makes it famous, the fact that everyone looks tired or what. Next door is a Cineplex with QuickTime videos. These appear to be just scenes from the movie, but I wouldn't know since I couldn't get the player to work. So I guess we can just look at the thumbnails. There's one of Stan Lee down there. He did a cameo for the film. There was a comic book theming to the film from what I've heard and read on the website so far. The next shop is sounds from the movie. And the section that is probably the most interesting is comic book art. These pieces of art all relate to the characters from the movie, as far as I can tell. The title is Comic Toast, and there are just a lot of fun and very timely joke-based comedic art. My favorites are the Legends of the Dork Knights, The Incredible Bulk, New Jersey 07732, and the Buttman Adventures. There's some very interesting artwork in here if you're so inclined to check it out. It feels so much like it fits into the world that they've created. The final section is set in the food court. Here we have Lost Mallrats footage, which is a promise for a special collector's edition of the movie set to be released in 2005. I can't wait. Next is a story in pictures, which tells the story of how the movie was directed in a short 6-image series. It's more behind the scenes stuff, but it was fun to look behind the lens. The final part is behind the scenes, where 2 members talk about what it was like working on the film. It's a fun read into some of the people that made the movie and the atmosphere on the set, something that we get a lot of in today's world. Leaving the mall as we've seen all it has to offer, we arrive back on the paper screen. Here we have 3 quick images of the stars of the movie. They are labeled by their characters. If you click on them, you get to see some of their famous quotes from movies they're in and the clips that they appear in. That's all there is to see for the Mallrats website, a tiny piece of history that has persisted on the internet since '97. It's been online longer than a lot of people I know, which is kind of the fun of the internet, getting to see what remains beyond social media and the surface web. The website feels like a man trying to defend his film that bombed, but also like a man that loved making the movie. He wanted to share all of these secrets with people and figured the best way to do so was with a website. A website that thankfully he left up for us to find and explore. Let's continue to dig and see what we can find. Elvendale is a yellow-stained webpage dedicated to the fantasy genre. The homepage feels as though you landed in a fantasy novel itself. Similar to other websites of this era, the majority of the links lead to a collection of photos and music. Among these links, there's a gallery of fantasy art, Scotland, fine arts, and a Tolkien gallery that no longer exists. The galleries of art are all fantasy related and feature the title of the work as well as the artist. The webpage owner collected a vast amount of art that spans over 10 links. There's a lot to look at. Fantasy and sci-fi brings us to a page filled with book recommendations and the webpage owner's favorite authors. Each author header has a description of books that are the owner's favorite, as well as their opinion on such books and the authors themselves. There are 7 authors listed and quite a few book recommendations from that author. The last working link brings us to a page dedicated to those new to the ElfQuest series. There are links to fan art, an introduction to ElfQuest, a short guide, and a German chat room about ElfQuest. Of course, the chat room no longer works, but the other links still bring us to their original landing pages. Elvendale is a great website for those interested in all things fantasy, ElfQuest, or both. This next site is one that I found while exploring a rabbit hole of personal sites. This is the Alien Enigma, a website that serves as an online club for alien enthusiasts. Upon landing on the homepage, you're greeted with a website true to its time, captured in perfect 2000s disjointed format and crammed fonts full of color. To begin, I clicked on the first link, Alien. Welcome to Alien Enigma. This website has been set up as a forum to meet and exchange information between persons who become part of the UFO experience. If you have seen a UFO, if you are an abductee, or if you simply have an interest in the validity of these experiences, we intend to give you an opportunity to investigate and share the information available and to share your experiences. Not to believe in UFOs is simply no longer possible. What was once a matter of ridicule is now mainstream news. Government officials, pilots, astronauts, scientists in all fields, as well as everyday people, have publicly stated that they have seen one or more UFOs. UFO sightings and investigations are not only nationwide, but worldwide. Abductees come from every walk of life, every culture, every faith, and every location on Earth. These experiences are very real and need to be treated in a sensible, intelligent way. There's also an attached YouTube channel. Oh, it's been removed for violating community guidelines. Never mind then. Going to their homepage, it's pretty much what you'd expect from a website of the era. We have a black background, some stars off to the side, and lots of blue text. At the top is the Alien Enigma title with dreams and experiencer projects written beneath it. An image of a UFO, a drawing of an alien, and another UFO image all sit below the text. On the left-hand side, there are a group of links. These are Home, Alien, Abductee, Accounts, Need to Know, Our Experience, Your Experience, UFO Pics, Disclosure, Reports, Links, Chat, UFO Map 90 to 1999, UFO Map 2000, Sightings, and UFO Pics 2. Next on the link list, let's go to Abductee. This section has a huge list of abductee symptoms. Some of these include have had missing or lost time, been paralyzed in your bed with a being in your room, seeing balls of light or flashes, having a strong memory of something but no idea where it came from, have had dreams of eyes looking at you or have a fear of eyes looking at you, and have a feeling of being watched, especially at night. In total, the website lists 54 abduction symptoms, which is a bit of overkill if you ask me. These symptoms all seem to be unrelated, but maybe that's just what they want you to think. I have a fear of being watched through windows, but I doubt aliens are the cause behind that one. Sleep paralysis is also a symptom of abductees, so I guess all of you watching that have had this happen to you, well, now you know the source. Some of these make some sense to me, like having lapses in memory. This one was common amongst those that claim to have been abducted many years ago. There's quite a few of these that feel like throwaways. As a few examples, having a paranormal experience, prone to compulsive behaviors, sexual or relationship problems, and having a hard time trusting others are not really symptoms of aliens. Most of these are likely due to mental illness rather than an alien abducting you on August 9th of 1972. I'm not sure aliens are the cause of your marital problems, unless you spend all your time with them and not your spouse. At the bottom of this page is a disclaimer. Having one or multiple of these doesn't mean you were abducted by aliens. They have their own reasons outside of aliens, of course. And you should also see a therapist. I would suggest going through this list yourself, as it is quite an interesting read. After reading that you have sleep issues because of aliens and not because of bad sleeping habits, you can view accounts. Right at the top of this page, you find an email where you can disclose your alien encounters to. There are so few accounts listed here, either due to the website being older and some being taken down, or because not many people actually experienced an alien event. Most of what I gathered was that 2001 was a very busy year for aliens for some reason. What was also odd is there are other accounts listed on this website, but they place them under different page links. Accounts, reports, need to know, our experience, your experience, and finally sightings all talk about someone's experience with aliens. The only difference is that the Our Experience page talks about the experience of Linda and Joe, the owners of Alien Enigma. This particular account reads almost like a novel, or nowadays, a Reddit post. You should check it out for yourself and determine if you believe in this experience or not. Aside from the links to photos of UFOs and the alien sightings map, all that's left to Alien Enigma are the links, chat, and disclosure pages. Let's start with the disclosure page, since the links page is filled with websites about aliens and sightings of aliens, as well as how to gather information about aliens. The disclosure page is just a personal soapbox for the website runners. It talks about how Dr. Greer, an educated professional, believes in aliens and how alien believers are no longer your crazy backwaters neighbor. They're educated people and can be found in any and every walk of life. While this is true, it doesn't help that this whole webpage, and the website for that matter, is riddled with spelling and grammatical errors. At the bottom of the page, there's a link to Dr. Greer's website, which is expired. His book entitled Disclosure, Military and Government Witnesses Reveal the Greatest Secrets in Modern History, the book on Amazon retails for $55.95, a bit steep for any type of book, honestly. What is really important here is that it was published on May 9th of 2001. This could explain the rapid influx of alien sightings on the Alien Enigma website. There's one more link on the disclosure page, a link to an alien enthusiast named Art Bell. Unfortunately, Art Bell passed away on April 13th of 2018, but his website is still up and his radio shows are archived. His website mainly boasts photos of him and his family and some of the music he'd play as bumpers. Art's Legacy website has a myriad of links about aliens and other cryptids. There's a lot to explore, but what I was really interested in was the radio shows. What was once a free audio stream has been replaced with a subscription service. There are a few videos on YouTube, but if anyone has listened to Art's UFO radio show, let me know how it is. The final link on this page that I will talk about is the chat link. This portion of the website is much more bare, probably due to its age. Imagine it was popping off with AOL emails left and right in 2001. There are a total of 27 entries visible in the chat link's guest book. The earliest entry was on October 18th, 2001, and the latest was on January 7th, 2024. Yes, the website is still being paid for to this day, but doesn't seem updated at all. Most of the chats don't say much, but a few talk about their own experiences with UFOs and ask if anyone else has ever experienced something similar. Overall, Alien Enigma is a great time capsule surrounding the alien hype surrounding the whistleblowing release of Dr. Greer's project. This website is an interesting site to look through, but due to all its source code issues and repetitive nature, it's very bare. Most of what I learned from this website was a plethora of symptoms due to an abduction and the experience of others who have encountered these aliens. The Rich Files was created by Richard Pyotter in 1998 and is dedicated to Pyotter's love of electronics and computers. The website is nothing short of a novel. Almost every page is filled to the brim with text. The About Me page features almost every single thing that Piotr enjoys, and even has a page called the Rich Files News page, which reads sort of like an online diary. It includes life events as well as things Richard Piotr is working on. The links to robotics and TI calculators are extremely interesting. The first link on the robotics page is to a page about Piotr's first homemade robot. On this page, there are pictures of the robot, the details on the mechanics and electronics of the robot, as well as a few diagrams. There's also a video of the robot walking that one can download if interested. The remaining links on the robotics page are similar. They all feature robots that Piotr created and their specs. It's a very interesting dive into robotics, and even more interesting if you understand them. The TI graphing calculator page is just as it sounds. It's for the TI graphing calculator. There are links to TI calculator prices, how to use the calculator, the software, and how to upgrade the calculator as well. This page is similar to the robotics page, in which a few links have diagrams and breakdowns of how the calculator works. The miscellaneous page shows links to Richard Piotr's school projects and achievements, his car, and his computer setup. There's also a page dedicated to models Piotr has built. Rich Files is an interesting website because of the in-depth diary of Richard Piotr, and his preservation of late 90s and early 2000s electronics. Surfing through this website brings no shortage of information about robotics and electronics, but also insight into someone's life. Before we get into this next website, I want to give a disclaimer. While I find a lot of these conspiracy theories, and theories in general, to be interesting, just talking about them doesn't mean that I believe in them. I'm just reporting on what I'm finding. The old internet has a lot of fringe theory believers that have interesting beliefs, whether those are rightfully founded or not. With that out of the way, our next website is called the Pentagon, and as I was writing this section, something crazy happened. The website went down. Its domain no longer loads for some reason, which would make this hard to research, but I can look it up on the website, the Wayback Machine, so we can still see what it has to hide. Citizen Investigation Team presents the Pentagon. This website is designed entirely around one conspiracy theory, a conspiracy around 9/11. This conspiracy is supposedly detailed in a documentary that this website hosts. First, let me read you their opening paragraphs. You have reached a website hosting a documentary with groundbreaking witness interviews proving the 9/11 official story false. There are many aspects of 9/11, but this movie focuses specifically on the events as they happened at the Pentagon. These first-hand eyewitness accounts were obtained by Citizen Investigation Team in a persistent effort to find the truth in light of a myriad of questions. We contacted as many of the previously published eyewitnesses we could obtain contact information for, and we canvassed the neighborhoods of Arlington, Virginia, on foot in a quest to find previously unknown witnesses. Our goal was to establish the final flight path of the plane before it reached the Pentagon, as seen by the eyewitnesses. The results are devastating, as we now know for sure that the plane could not be what damaged the Pentagon or the light poles. We first present the smoking gun version, featuring quadruple corroborated testimony showing beyond a reasonable doubt that the plane flew on the north side of the Citgo station, completely contradicting the official story. This simple fact makes it impossible for the plane to have toppled the light poles and damaged the buildings as outlined in the Building Performance Report by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Since the release of this presentation in 2007, we have uncovered an astronomical amount of corroborating evidence, and this can be viewed in our acclaimed subsequent presentation titled National Security Alert, available to view on our primary website, citizeninvestigationteam.com. Their website is one that we'll be getting to later, so this website holds evidence of the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. It's supposed to show that the whole story that was told the American people and the world was actually wrong, as part of some cover-up. Continuing down the page are a bunch of links that no longer work. There's also other videos that support their theory, but those are also lost on the Wayback Machine version. I can't even watch their main documentary. I clicked on the View Movie tab and am met with this. The video couldn't be archived, but it looks like it might be available on YouTube, so I can watch it there instead. We'll discuss the film later. Let's keep exploring the website. The next tab is DVD, which is just a way to get a DVD copy of the film. They tell you how to download the thing and burn it onto your computer, which is free of course. Or you could buy a copy from them for $45 if you're in the US, $50 if you're in Canada, and $55 for international buyers. I'm not sure why you would want to do this when you can just watch it for free on YouTube. There's a section which holds all of their videos. These are all related to the same conspiracy and each varies in length. Some are an hour or more, while others are just 10 minutes long. Most, if not all, are interviews with people who allegedly saw the attack that day. All of these videos can be found on the YouTube channel Citizen Investigation Team. They're all dead links on the website now though. I did find a working link that took me to the discussion page. It's the CIT Research Forum, and the first thing you see at the top of the page is a donation link. No one, it appears, has donated money in some time, except for someone who gave them $10 4 years ago. Aside from that, you have posts from as late as 2019, though a majority of the posts come from 2009 to 2016. Many of those were posted in 2011 specifically. The most popular post is from 2008 and is titled Witness List Broken Down. What follows is a statement from the group. Hello all, here's a great resource for you all to use. It consists of a breakdown of all witnesses in relation to what they said versus what they actually saw or could have seen. I based this analysis on what was actually printed. Without direct confirmation and scrutinizing of witnesses, claims, and POV locations. They are merely static words floating around left to imply an impact. Seeing plane plus smoke fireball does not equal actually witnessing an impact. Seeing/describing a plane plus reporters' deduction sensationalizing about witness accounts does not equal actually witnessing an impact. Speaking with witnesses and clarifying the details of their account is the only way to get answers. Some witnesses are genuine and some are not. Some are real people with real lives who are confused and convinced by the attacks in New York, while some are deep cover operatives or assets implicitly planting bogus information to make us chase our tails or delicately dancing between ambiguous statements. After this, they list 5 important witnesses of that day. Important to note, these witnesses all contradict each other in some way, making it hard to tell if any of them are genuine or not. Also, one witness changed their story after further questioning. This could have been a lapse in memory or something implanted through the questioning. Human memory is sadly a very fickle thing. Below these 5 is a list of others who claim to have been in the area but only saw the plane and not the impact. This list is far more extensive, but most of them weren't direct witnesses to the impact, which is what the group is trying to prove. The amount of witnesses that they tried to track down was pretty astonishing. There were over 100 people that the group attempted to contact for discussion. A lot of them were listed as confirmed, but I'm not sure what they're confirming. It seems like they were confirmed witnesses, but not in what they saw. Though there are so many people on this list that have claimed to see the plane. More than those that claimed it was a missile that they saw or heard. There were a few that claimed to have seen the light poles get hit by the plane before the crash, though those witnesses are scrutinized to have probably seen them after the fact. Beneath this is everyone talking about the events of the day, everything from there being 2 planes, a missile attack, and a huge cover-up. The comments are what you'd expect from a conspiracy post, honestly. There's a lot of discussion around certain events and the possibilities. No one can really seem to agree though. The final section is probably the most important part of the website. That's the info section. Here we have detailed info about every investigation the Citizen Investigation Team underwent. These are those articles. There are 18 in total, with several of them about the same topic. The starting point is the mission statement, listed at the bottom of the webpage. Let's start there. This is the mission statement. It's a pretty short read. Citizen Investigation Team is dedicated to exposing the truth behind the 9/11 attacks strictly via first-hand research and guerrilla investigative reporting efforts. We limit our reporting to data that we have obtained ourselves from direct contact with eyewitnesses, first responders, victims, authorities, as well as complicit operatives in person and on location as much as possible. We refuse speculation and will only present hypotheses based off of data that we have personally obtained. Previous reports from mainstream as well as alternative media will never be assumed correct unless confirmed or clarified. We patently reject hypotheses that cannot be proven and therefore deliberately refuse no plane theories or anything based on the use of unknown or exotic weaponry, as much as we reject the official conspiracy theory. Although we understand that it is possible for the suspects in question to have access to unknown technology, we believe that there is enough evidence available to prove the official story false without involving speculation in this regard. We stress the importance of on-site research and encourage others to make efforts to get answers with this approach. We advocate only non-violent solutions and are demanding truth, justice, peace, and the end of the fraudulent war on terror. This is a pretty strong mission statement. In this, they decry all the false conspiracy theories, claiming that the research they have done is the only one that you can trust. This is because they do reporting with actual witnesses and are simply searching for the truth rather than making something up to bring against the government. The thing is, no matter how many words they used to describe the reporting, they weren't there. They weren't inside the Pentagon on that day. They constantly debunk the idea of there being 2 planes at the Pentagon that day, a very popular conspiracy, because it doesn't match with the theory they came up with themselves. That the plane left the area after the explosion happened. An explosion they believed was caused by a planted bomb inside the building. The biggest denial that they have been running on this website is the existence of a second plane seen that day. The group claims that the second plane was part of a disinformation counterintelligence operation conducted by the US government to distract from their claims. If people can easily disprove their conspiracy theory, then they can disprove theirs. Only, there was a second plane that day, a private jet owned by a company by the name of VF Corp. Their plane was making its descent when it was asked by Federal Aviation Administration Cleveland Center to fly over the area and report on what they saw. They did so, and then returned to their initial flight plan. This would be the second plane that many reported seeing that day. All in all, this is a website with a very specific belief they are wanting to spread. From what I've been able to uncover, most people have bought into this specific event. More people believe in the 2-plane and missile conspiracy than this one. On my last day of examining the website, it was finally back online. So if anyone wants to check out the website with a large amount of data to sift through, you can. My biggest takeaway and warning is to go into everything with an open mind, but also be skeptical. Not every theory is a conspiracy, but not everything is a conspiracy. Here's Spatula City, a website where you can explore the fascinating world of spatulas. The website has rubber ducks everywhere and hardly any spatulas. I looked from the starting page to the aisles to the bins. The starting page welcomes you with the title of the site at the top, a little pool with a rubber duck in the rear, and loads of tiny spatulas making up the wallpaper. A welcome message tells us that this is the place for all of your spatula needs on the World Wide Web. I'm not sure how often I thought of going online to buy a spatula, but I'm pretty sure I've never thought of it. Clicking away from this page, you are met with the many aisles of the online shopping experience. What this really is a personal site for a college student, or students, I should say. They made a website about spatulas with art of spatulas, the use of spatulas, and a fake store to buy them from. What you'll find most are interesting internet finds and artwork. Well, you would find artwork if it weren't for the thumbnails of the spatulas not working. This is all you see when you go down the spatula aisles. There's text explaining what you should be seeing, and artists and contributors attached but no actual spatulas. Well, I suppose the actual nature of the posts is about different spatula ideas rather than art or models of them. The other aisles offer different interests on the site. The second one I went down was a section dedicated to the writings of the site author. They wrote some net-based humor, which I can only imagine is very modern. There's also a load of Ranma 1/2 fanfictions. This is an anime from the same creator as Inuyasha and was very popular in the late 80s and early 90s. This is a very unique take on a personal site. The humor is very much of the era and references are as well. The last thing I wanted to look at was this section about my fortune from the Silly Zone. You will die today. This isn't how I expected to find out. While exploring the world of abandoned websites, I stumbled across an old MMO. Or at least, I think it's an MMO. The website was crude, but the logo seemed interesting to me. I wasn't sure if I should cover it since there was an apparent update on June of 2024, but looked at the player numbers and saw that it was virtually abandoned. This would be my next adventure into the abandoned virtual worlds that litter the internet. Firstly, I looked through the website to find out how to download the game. So you have to make an account before the option is made available to you. I downloaded the game and waited for an archaic system to install. With the download finally done, I started the system and was met with an old school game launcher. This was not uncommon for the older PC games. In fact, Baldur's Gate 3 still has a separate launcher, as does Final Fantasy XIV. This launcher had music that was ear-splittingly loud, but easy enough to lower. This is what you're met with when you start up the game. This thing has had updates, but it still looks and sounds like it came from a version of the old internet. The options are limited, and it doesn't look great, but it works for what it is. It gives you two options for servers. You can play on the PvE or PvP server. I clicked on the PvE server and was ready to do some exploring. Only that didn't happen. The game would not let me log in. There was some issue that was preventing me from getting past the first screen. I would click and it wouldn't open. This went on for an hour. I decided to check out the forums, but they were pretty barren as expected. I did find a workaround. I bought the game on Steam for $30 and was able to get it to work through there. I would sadly have to lose $30 for this game that I probably wasn't going to enjoy. A price for doing some digging, I guess. I started the character creator and made the most generic looking character I could. I wanted to get into the game as quickly as possible. I left most of the stuff as it was. This is not a very good looking character, but that's okay. It'll work for my purposes. I loaded up with visual glitches greeting me. There was a frame stutter happening as well. This game looked like it came out in 2011 for sure. The game was playable in both first and third person, and I decided to explore in both perspectives to see what I liked. I found an animal right outside of the main city. It was someone's pet, so maybe I'd find a player here or something. I wandered out of the main city and saw a colorful sky as the sun was cresting behind the mountains. There were structures everywhere, probably made by other players, I assume. There were loads of pets around, but I hadn't seen any wildlife yet. I picked the hunter's skill, so I assumed I'd be able to hunt for my food. I continued around the structures, but there wasn't anything calling to me among them. This is when I noticed that I had a hunger meter, along with energy, health, water, weight, and experience. So this was a survival game, like an early version of Rust. I continued out amongst the trees and found that I could swim. An important first step in any journey. I found my first enemy. It was a rookie revenant. I couldn't figure out how to shoot my bow at it, so I died pretty quickly. It took maybe 5 hits before I was dead. Not a great start, but I'll admit I didn't look at the controls, as I just wanted to explore and see what the game had to offer. I respawned next to a dog who looked pretty happy to see me. I'm probably the first player he's seen in a while. I walked around the starting area and saw empty buildings in every direction. I entered so many just to be met with nothing of interest. I'm not sure if this area was made by someone or if it was created by the devs. It said I couldn't mess with most of the stuff in this area. That's kind of what I expected. The sun was rapidly dropping from the sky. I would need to head out into the dark of night. Once I read through the tutorial, I was able to figure out the buttons for combat and change to a first-person view. The game didn't change how it operated once I changed it, though. It was still the same controls, only I could see in a first-person view now. It was fine, but not that much more immersive. I decided I wanted to try and get some food now. I ran across the forests and along the coast, but found not a single animal to hunt. That doesn't seem right. I had to eat something, but I couldn't find anything to eat. I might starve to death before I can explore the game as much as I want. I finally found a deer. It was inside of a structure. I approached it, but it didn't even respond to me. I clicked on the deer and saw that it was someone's pet. Well, I'd feel bad for eating someone's pet, even if they just left it here until the servers died. I found a trail of fallen trees that looked like they were acting like a guide for me. I wasn't sure what could be waiting for me at the end, but I was eager to check it out. I was hoping to run into at least one person while playing. From my research, the game should have at least a couple dozen players online at any given time. The trail finally came to a clearing. There was another settlement here. This one had a very interesting looking watchtower. I climbed it but found that I couldn't light the beacon because I didn't own the structure. This was becoming a trend, where there just weren't any resources for me as a new player. I clicked on one of the structures. It looked like a covered wagon. It said that the last time that it was used was 561 days ago. That means that the person who owned this thing hasn't logged in over a year. Yet the structure was still there, as if they were coming back at any moment. Much like all the pets were following me around like they were just happy to see someone. This whole area was the same story. Every object I clicked on said that it had been used 561 days ago. There were even usernames for those who owned the items. It felt more and more desolate as I explored. The feeling of being alone was something I've encountered a lot while exploring these virtual worlds, but this one feels even more so. Every building holds the time and date of the last use, and none were even within the year. The remnants of what might have been a thriving community once now all lie barren and neglected. The only thing this game is missing is a decay system. That would really drive home the feeling of abandonment this game exudes. There's some love and creativity here, but that is long gone now. The only thing that is left to do is see what else might be lurking in this world. I left the safety of the settlement and ran into the woods. I needed to see if there was more, if there was something. The loneliness was strong in this game. I found another dog, but it was running towards me faster than the others had. Oh, that's not a dog. That's an enemy wolf. Too bad, the models look so similar. He killed me before I even got to try out the combat system again. I restarted in the main city and took a walk around the perimeter. There was a surprisingly nice view of the ocean and the moon just outside. It isn't the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, but it was serene and almost nostalgic for some reason. I couldn't stay here long as my hunger meter kept draining. I returned to the first settlement and saw an enemy. I tried to fight it 2 different times, but fell both times. The game may have an interesting idea with a constant digital world for all to share, but the combat is terrible. I decided to leave my search here. I wasn't making any progress since I kept dying before making it very far from the starting point. It was an interesting sounding game, but I just couldn't find anything worth digging up here. I didn't even run into another player the entire time, which is kind of a letdown, because maybe they could have shown me something worth seeing here. For as many websites as we have today that lie forgotten, they are still accessible. Well, that's not always the case. Some websites are no longer available on the clear web. Sometimes, if you're lucky, a website will be archived on the Wayback Machine. In most cases, this can be true, but not always. Some websites are considered lost media. They can't be browsed anymore for one reason or another. Some were even illegal and therefore banned from the internet. These websites are probably better left lost. That doesn't mean the others should be. I could make an entire iceberg talking about the lost internet media that exists, but I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that there are loads of websites that are gone forever. Lost in more ways than one. Year 5 Billion is a satire website created before the year 2000, criticizing those who believed in Y2K. The site talks about how the sun will only burn until the year 5 billion, so we need to get ready for that. It says to keep all of your receipts and watch for changes in temperature starting January 1st, 5 billion. The site includes tips for surviving without the sun, what to do with your electronics that rely on the sun, and how to cook the books for the year 5 billion. There are some great tips for living life without the sun here, except that we couldn't survive without the sun. The site calls the year 5 billion the Millennium Bug, and that should tell you all you need to know about it. You can also buy insurance for when the sun dies if you need it. You never know when you'll need to be covered. This website was created in 1999 and it looks like it. There's a pitch black background with square JPEGs of the sun. It has that strangely yellow text underneath and tons of links off to the left. This was a website clearly mocking Y2K and does that very well while also being the perfect relic of the year 1999. Brockton Genealogy is a website dedicated to the history of Brockton, Massachusetts. It stands as a site that catalogs all the history of Brockton. The website was started in 2000 but received its last update in 2007. The site is still online, but no new updates have been made to it since then. You can read about the history of the town and the famous people who lived there. Some of the more interesting stuff is found in the history section. The most interesting, but a little eerie, is a list of people who have died in Brockton. Here's a list, last updated in 2007, that contains the name, age, death date, and where the person was buried. It's like an online cemetery where you can look through records dating back to the 1700s. The list was well kept until the last day of the update. Some of these deaths have causes listed instead of where they were buried. Locomotive accidents, dysentery, ship fever, and consumption are only a few of the listed reasons. It's kind of sad to see the many ways people have died, and have that chronicled on your website, but it makes sense and is honoring them in a way. The saddest part is the deaths of a few of those listed. There are quite a few listed as 1 to 4 years of age. The shortest lifespan is only 4 days for one of the names. While this is all historically interesting, this website is also kind of a somber reminder that life has an end and we don't know when that'll be. Exit Mundi is a website that tells you exactly what it's about at the top of the page. A collection of end-of-world scenarios. Yeah, that pretty much sums it all up. Here's a website from the late 90s with a final update in 2008. It's a website that wants to catalog every way the world could end. It's a very simple looking website. You have the logo at the top left with the website's phrase above it. On the left are a group of links with names like Planet X, meteors, and black holes. These are expectedly some of the ways the world can come to an end. The main section of the site that you're going to want to look through, though, are the thumbnails in the middle. This is a timeline of when the world could end. They are separated into 4 distinct groups. Firstly, we have Any Day Now, which is a collection of events that can happen at any time. Next is the Near Future, which goes from 07 to 2400. Considering the near future starting date was almost 20 years ago, I think this website could use some updating. After that comes the Distant Future, which picks up 100,000 years ahead. The final is Religion, which looks to cover several religious world-ending scenarios. Each section has a single word along with a thumbnail to describe what you're looking at. For some of them, it's pretty easy to tell, while others, not so much. Some of the images I recognize from stock photos, some from movies, and some from video games. Let's take a look through some of these, hitting a few in each section, starting with the Any Day Now section. Firstly, we have Zap, the first link in the row. This one starts with a story about how life is most likely out there, in space I mean, and that life becomes furious at humanity and kills us all. This doomsday scenario is one of aliens coming to Earth and taking us all out. Either they do this from the comfort of their spaceships or on the surface of Earth itself. The main point of this article may be about the world-ending scenarios of aliens, but most of it is spent on pondering whether aliens actually exist or not. It's a good starting point, and there are loads of images to go along with the story they are weaving. There's even a movie review at the bottom. Well, kind of. They didn't like War of the Worlds. I guess that makes sense. The next link I clicked on was prefaced with Boyle, and I had an idea of what it was going into. The runaway greenhouse effect is a climate change end-of-world scenario that has been studied by climatologists for a few decades now. This is what the article is discussing. Here's an excerpt from the start of the article. Phew, aren't we lucky? In the 1990s, they predicted we would get climate warming. The poles were about to melt, they said. Entire countries would get flooded. Huge hurricanes would sweep across the globe. Millions would die. Well, they had it all wrong. It's the 21st century now and little has happened so far. But then, suddenly it all changes. From one month to the next, the climate of the world goes wild. Temperatures jump, the ice caps of the poles crumble, pushing the sea levels up. The snow caps on the mountain tops melt, turning even the tiniest rivulet into a roaring body of water. Cities are flooded. Countries washed away. Tornadoes and hurricanes push across the globe. Harvests fail. Economics crumble. Tropical diseases like malaria and dengue push northwards. Forests turn into deserts, and of course, millions of people perish during all the mayhem. And if you thought that was bad, you haven't seen nothing yet. Within a few decades, the situation goes totally out of hand. Temperatures just keep rising, faster and faster. And as they do, more and more water on Earth begins to evaporate. The sea level begins to drop again. If you're one of those poor souls who had their country or city flooded when the ice caps melted, you might be glad to find the sea is retreating. But don't put that flag out yet. What you're witnessing is the end of the world. Nothing more, nothing less. The runaway greenhouse effect states that if too much greenhouse gas gets released into the atmosphere, it would become too dense to ever cool. This would lead to all sorts of disasters, including floods, tsunamis, and eventually turning landscapes into deserts. The scientists that saw this as a possibility pointed to Venus as an example. It's a planet with an atmosphere thicker than Earth's by a wide margin. Venus lives in what exactly the runaway greenhouse effect exemplifies. A world that is so hot that life cannot live on it. This was seen as a possibility in the 90s and early 2000s. Luckily, in 2012, another subset of scientists were able to prove that the runaway greenhouse effect was nearly impossible to happen to Earth. They stated that there was nowhere near enough greenhouse gases created by humanity to create what has happened on Venus. There are quite a few more natural disaster or world-ending scenarios listed here. This includes a great flash created by a star being devoured by a black hole, an ice age created by climate change, super comets hitting Earth, a tsunami that floods the world, the moon falling out of our orbit, and a black hole devouring us. This website is extensive with its research and understanding of each of these world-ending events. Let's take a look at a few that aren't caused by the planet itself. The one that most people probably think of first is one that felt like a possibility not so long ago: a nuclear apocalypse created by the world's governments. Here's another excerpt from their article. There's nuclear war, and now the SBMs, ICBMs, and SLBMs cross the sky like oddly shaped, featherless birds of destruction. All hell breaks loose. There's eye-popping flashes of light everywhere and ear-ripping bangs as the bombs go off. Cities evaporate. Infrastructures crumble. Everywhere, huge mushroom-shaped clouds tower up into the sky. All electricity goes out because of electromagnetic effects. And of course, many die. According to even the mildest scenarios, hundreds of millions die instantaneously as the nukes go boom. But you survived all that. Better take shelter. For the next days, it will rain highly radioactive fallout particles. For almost 3 days and 3 nights in a row, it will rain radioactivity in a region several hundreds of kilometers around each impact site. And to be honest, it's best you sit indoors for a whole year, patiently waiting until radioactivity levels finally begin to drop. But wait, there's more trouble. As the mushroom clouds begin to fade, the real consequences of nuclear war become apparent. From the explosion sites, huge amounts of evaporated stuff, smoke, and soot rise up into the sky. It's quite different from the usual smoke columns that come from fires. The intense heat from the nuclear impact sites pushes the debris straight into the highest parts of the atmosphere, the so-called stratosphere. There, it slowly starts to disperse, covering even bigger portions of the world. But what's worse? The soot blocks the sun. Within days, a weird and unprecedented climate shift sets in. Total darkness covers everything. Temperatures drop rapidly, and chances are the soot blanket that prevents the sun from shining spreads across the globe, transforming even the Latin Americas, Asia, and Africa into chilly shadow worlds. There you have it, the infamous, dreaded nuclear winter. Within weeks, it's minus 23 to 30 degrees Celsius everywhere. Do you live near the shore? Consider yourself lucky. Since oceans cool so slowly, temperatures near the sea will drop only some 5 to 10 degrees. But there is a downside. Because of the big temperature differences between the sea and the inland, unimaginable storms and hurricanes will harass the coastal areas. This is only the beginning of the issues with nuclear war. This article does a good job of setting you up for it though. It tells you what happens, but not the politics of who did it. It's a great read, and continues further with a nuclear winter section. Nuclear end-of-the-world scenarios have always been popular, well, ever since the first nuke dropped. There are hundreds of books, movies, and games about this end-of-world scenario. In fact, one of the most popular gaming franchises of all time, Fallout, uses this scenario as its story setting and backdrop. There's something so poetic about the world coming to an end by the hands of the ones that currently sit at the top of its food chain. The politics aside, the nukes aren't just a poetic end of the world, but they are a very real threat that still exists. One that several governmental bodies still possesses. It's fun to read about the end of the world after the nuclear war. It's less a fun thought to remember that there were moments in time where it could have been a reality. Continuing down the row, we have an article about disease. This article discusses a disease that could come into play that could wipe out the entirety of humanity before we can even find a cure. This scenario ranks highly on their website. They list several types of influenza that have come and gone and the devastating effects they've had on society. It isn't so far-fetched to think that a disease could be our downbringing, especially with how quickly a strand of anything can spread across the globe. They claim that it's only a matter of time, really. If we look back to a few of the biggest diseases to wreak havoc on our populace, it's a very real scenario. You don't even have to go back to the time of the Black Death. We had polio, and a more recent influenza that wreaked a ton of havoc on our society. This scenario, like the nuclear one, feels closer than the website gives it credit for. While a lot of these seem to fall back on some science as a reason to fear it, there are a few that have none to back it up. The articles only exist because the scenario is interesting. This is the case with the Matrix theory, which gets its own article. I discussed the Matrix theory before on my channel, but it's one that has come up quite a bit in my research. Essentially, the Matrix theory states that we are all part of a computer simulation that some supercomputer is running. Most of the belief is that there is an advanced race or after-humans that are running our simulation to test something. Once that hypothesis has been proven or disproven, they'll just disconnect us. In an instant, all life in our universe will just be gone. It's like we never existed, because we technically didn't. This theory is extremely popular online. The subreddit for it has 1.1 million people. The theory has its believers, but most of it's based entirely on hypotheticals. There isn't any hard science to prove it, yet. Of course, there's also the theory that if we were to prove it, the simulation would just end. Knowing you're part of an experiment kind of makes the evidence you get from it null. So I guess I hope we never prove it. Moving to the next section, we can see more scenarios set around the modern day. Though 2012 is far in our rearview mirror now. It wasn't that long ago that many believed that the world would end on the 21st of December, 2012. The 2012 end of world scenario was based entirely on the Mayan calendar and spread heavily online, but the most quickly through YouTube. Let's take a look to see what the article says. The article claims that the Mayans were able to predict every single solar event with incredible accuracy thanks to their calendar system. They had predicted that the sun would be in perfect alignment with the center of the galaxy. They called this the sacred tree, but never mentioned what was supposed to happen that day. Further claims are made that Mayans were able to predict how their society would be overrun by Spaniards. The Spaniards then proceeded to destroy every book that the Maya might have had concerning why the calendar ended on that specific date. So the end of world scenario was born from the lack of knowledge, which is how many rumors are started actually. There were a lot of theories about 2012 before it happened. Thoughts that there would be a nuclear war started that day, or maybe it was a biblical judgment day, or even that a natural disaster from the stars could wipe out all of humanity. This didn't happen, of course. 2012 came and went, much like every world-ending date predicted by people. This one wasn't predicted by the Mayans, though, and it more so came from people's speculation. It has led to a movie, a few books, and even an entire alternate history that someone had created. What about how the world came to an end or started its descent towards the end, which some people actually believe to be the downward turn of society. Some in the Matrix theory community even believe that the date was important for something in the simulation. Like we diverged at some point from that date. Again, this is just speculation, mostly for fun. There are quite a few other sections worth mentioning, but I really just want to cover one final one. That is the zombie apocalypse scenario. When this article was written, the world hadn't quite gotten bored of zombie culture yet. Things like The Walking Dead hadn't started, and Left 4 Dead 1 had just come out. That didn't mean there wasn't plenty of zombie culture to influence the article, though. There were a whole slew of films that focused on the dead rising and killing us all. Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead came out in the 70s and 80s respectively. The idea of the cannibal zombie was already starting to take on life in pop culture. The 2000s and early 2010s saw the rise in zombie apocalypse stories and scenarios, though. There were hundreds of different zombie scenarios that could play out. There were the infected, which could be created by disease, or the cursed, that were dead bodies reanimated. The amount of types of zombies were pretty incredible, and the versatility of the creature was almost limitless. This article takes on the more popular movie versions made famous by the two films I mentioned before. They also mention 28 Days Later, which is a great movie. Needless to say, they have no science for any of the backing, but that doesn't take away from the interest this end-of-world scenario has generated. This section mostly focuses on how the scenario would play out if zombies actually overtook the Earth. That's about all the scenarios I wanted to go through for this video. I haven't even scratched the surface, as there are loads of articles based on everything from the biblical end of the world to a lab-created fungus that kills us all. This website is packed full of content, and I highly recommend any internet archaeologist to check it out. For our final entry on this iceberg, we're going to talk about a somewhat well-known abandoned blog. The reasoning for the abandonment of the blog is a good one. This is because the person who ran the blog died in 2021. This would be a sad fact, but in this case it's not. The blog belonged to a serial killer named Joseph Duncan, and it's called The Fifth Nail Exposed. Before we go too deep into the blog, let me inform you about its creator. Joseph Duncan was a serial killer who was in and out of jail a few times in his life. He harmed many people on his way into the justice system. His first time getting arrested, he was under the age of 18, though the crime was essay against a 9-year-old at gunpoint. This was only the beginning of his vile and depraved acts. He received 20 years in prison for this crime, but was released early for good behavior, getting out on only 14 years served. He would go on to murder 3 people while on parole, but he wasn't immediately caught for these. Duncan moved to Minnesota from Washington, where he continued his depraved acts and was charged again but ran out of the courts once bail was posted by a businessman acquaintance. While on the run, Duncan would commit his final murders. He broke in, killed a family of 3, before kidnapping the 2 younger kids. He was eventually caught when he was spotted at a Denny's with only one of the children. The other he had killed not too long before. He was then sentenced to death row, where he would live out the remainder of his life. This brings us back to the blog. The blog, or set of blogs, are the writings of Joseph Duncan. His first blog simply made himself out to be no worse than anyone else. He spent most of it feeling sorry for himself. That blog was started in 2004, but the one we're looking at was started in 2010, while he was on death row. The first post is from September 2010 and appears to be a correction of a news article that he saw from 2005. It's hard to read as he goes through the article and tries to make himself seem less bad than he actually was. He also goes through and adds more to what the article didn't say. The more articles you read, the more you'll see how depraved he really was. He blames society a lot for his problems and claims to have reached out a lot for help. Whether that's true or not, we won't find the answers here. What is true is that his stories get more and more explicit with each new update. That is until the final update in 2020. This was a story about how he tried to escape to Canada but was stopped at the border. He was turned around and somehow evaded cops. This would be his final update, as he would die of brain cancer in 2021. He leaves behind this interesting but depraved look into the psyche of a serial killer. The webpage is still up and viewable today, but I do warn any who want to read it. Even for a seasoned true crime fan, it's hard to read. Thank you all for making it to the end of the video. This video is one of the longer ones I've done in a while. Hope you all enjoyed it. While this is a large chunk of the abandoned internet finds I've found, this is definitely not all of them. I have so much more to show you all, as the internet is a vast place. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Victor Estrada, Nora Kingsley, Memtendo, Miriam Reyes, Joe Gillespie, and Austin Henshaw. You all do so much for this channel. Thank you to everyone who watches my content. I hope you all have a good night.